Today's episode with David Collum is brought to you by River, the preferred choice for buying this Bitcoin dip. Get up to $100 in Bitcoin when you sign up and buy Bitcoin at river.com/matrix. Have you secured your ticket to Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville yet? Don't miss out on this historic event of epic proportions. Use the code MATRIX at checkout to enjoy a 10% discount on your order. Hurry, visit b.tc/conference now to secure your spot and join us this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in Nashville. Don't wait any longer. Get your ticket now and be part of this momentous occasion. Remember to use the code MATRIX for 10% off your tickets at b.tc/conference. I can't wait to see you there. Keep building, keep stacking, and always be laser focused. This is Cedric. Peace.
What is real? How do you define real?
You can't jump into cash. Cash is trash. What do? You get out.
Dr. David B. Collum is a professor at the Cornell University. He received a Doctor of Philosophy from Columbia University in the city of New York. His research interests are chemistry and chemical biology, physical organic chemistry, organolithium chemistry, organosodium chemistry, kinetics, and reaction mechanism. David Collum, welcome back to the Bitcoin Matrix for the 5th time. How are you, sir?
Wow, that's amazing, actually. I guess I wouldn't have guessed 5. That's a ton.
Yeah, and I think almost 20 hours. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Probably a couple days.
Yeah. How you been?
I've been okay. Ithaca's hot. I mean, it's like a 250% humidity kind of day where it feels like it ought to be just pouring rain and it's not for some reason. It's, I don't know, it's probably 85, but it feels hotter.
Do you not like the summer as much?
No, I like the summer. Summer's fine. The heat doesn't bother me. The winter doesn't bother me either. Ithaca's milder than people think. We have a reputation for being snowbound, and that's just not correct. I probably plow my driveway twice a year. I mean, it's just, you go an hour north of us, you hit a lot of snow. An hour north of that, you hit a lot more. I mean, it doubles every hour going north from here. So,
do you miss having the students around?
No, and then by the end of the summer, I'm happy they're coming back. So it's one of those, kind of like summer vacation. Remember when you're happy to be out, but then you kind of were getting excited about seeing your friends in school and stuff like that. So it's a mixed blessing.
Is this your last year?
No, it's what I've done. Everyone's asking me that. What I've done is I've wrapped up my research program. On Thursday, my last student defends his thesis. I kind of burned the ships in the harbor. My wife wanted me to quit. She wanted me to wrap. And so I did not renew the grants and said, okay. My target was always from day one, 45 years ago, my target was 70. And I'm now 69. And I said, okay, it's either going to be 69 or 74. And she, and the group runs you. So I kind of realized that it's probably time to go. I talked to one of my most senior students about it extensively, a real smart kid. We talked about the pros and cons of wrapping now versus later. One of the things that happens is you can be doing great work and the young guys move on to something new. And it actually can suck, but they no longer care about what you do. So, for example, I collect 18th century American furniture, which is fantastic furniture. The modern generation likes chrome. Now, they're completely full of shit, but the fact is they don't give a damn about 18th century American furniture. And so, trends come and go. And so I was talking to truly one of the great legends of organic chemistry, and he said, well, we don't need any more of my chemistry now. And I didn't know what he meant by that when I was talking to him about a decade ago. And I now sort of understand that. You become Windows 95. You might run better than the modern Windows, right? you might not have all the glitches, computers drive me nuts, but everyone else is using AI, and so I think 45 years is a pretty good run. So I took it. I'll make Cornell pay for a couple of years of teaching. Way overpriced, right? Teaching's not hard. And so I even volunteered to teach an extra course this coming year, and they didn't take it. They didn't accept it. So be it.
Well, entering this fall seems to be quite a dramatic time.
You think.
I read some of your tweets about, maybe kicking off this semesters of school years last year and, kind of maybe riffing a little bit in class and dealing with maybe, the college kids. But I'd love to turn to just maybe some of the current events.
Sure.
And I think the place to start is the Trump versus Biden debate.
Right.
I'd love to get your take on that.
Well, I think Biden did exactly what many of us expected, right? I mean, Biden was losing his marbles in 2020, and people who somehow think that's not true, they've got to do a sort of a recollection where when Biden survived the debates, that was considered a victory, because they thought the first debate could be a bloodbath. And of course, you can't use that word now because that'll be used against you. But it wasn't a bloodbath. They juiced Biden up pretty good, and he hung in there. And so Trump did not pull off a knockout. And then, in my opinion, they rigged the election, and Biden got in there, and he did what he was supposed to do. Over the last 4 years, however, he's clearly gone downhill. And up until the debate, the dominant media narrative was that Biden wasn't losing his marbles, and that those were what they called cheap fakes and taking things out of context. I go, I've seen so many clips of Biden fumbling crap that's just inexcusably bad for someone who's sane. And so when he showed up at the debate, I don't think he tanked it. I think that's all he had. I think that was it. And I think that they tried to set it up such that Trump couldn't bully him, and it turned out, as Donald Jr. said, it actually played favorably because it kept his father under control. And so while Biden is talking, Trump can all he can do is roll his eyes, but it was a rather effective eye rolls, and he's kind of looking sideways like this guy's nuts, right? And then when Biden really blew one and he said, I don't know what he just said. I don't think he knows what he just said. That was, that's a knockout punch. I mean, that's a serious. So then the question is, did the left get it that wrong? And I would say no. There's no chance they didn't know he was marble deficient. You just couldn't possibly delude yourself that much. And the guys who worked with him, who have to escort him off stage, and Easter bunnies who have to make sure he doesn't walk off the playing field, stuff like that. So they were, so they knew he was gone, and they tried to get him elected again. So what I would say is that that them trying to get him elected again was irresponsibility of a higher order. So if I were a Democrat, which I'm not, I'd be so pissed off that they tried to hand me that guy without having sort of fair and honest, preseason games and, debates and things like that. And I don't know if they were desperate and they didn't have a bench that they thought they could go to, or or they thought we can just jam Biden down their throats. I think they're already, teeing up bad voting, but I don't think there's a voting machine in the country that can swing this election at this point. So then after the debate, it seemed pretty clear to me that, so let's say he shocked him. Let's say he shocked him, not that they didn't know he was losing his marbles, but they thought they could drug him past it. The various networks who have participated in this outrageous abuse of our democratic system, which, by the way, the parties are not part of the democratic system. They're LLCs. They're not for profit. The only thing you could hold their feet to the flames on is that you could get them on a fraud charge for fraudulent representation, for collecting money or something. But otherwise, as Samantha Bee said, who I'm not a big fan, you can use a Ouija board to pick a candidate if you want. But I don't think you can raise huge amounts of money promising to do something and then doing something different. So that's where it gets complicated, I think. So in any event, so if he had shocked them, as in like, oh, we thought they'd be able to get him by with super training and rigging the debate and everything like that. Biasing the debate, should I say, not rigging. Then the post-election analysis would have been chaotic. So it would have been guys wringing their hands like crazy, going, "Well, I don't know, he had a bad night, that whole baloney, and I don't know, so I don't think he did so bad." But it was really 100% Biden tanked. He's got to go. And so it told me that they knew before the election was over that Biden had to go. And you can say, well, okay, someone from the network said to the panel, "Don't try to save this one, just let it go." But every single network did. And I would say Fox was the most tame, because I don't think Fox wants to take him out. I think they want him in there. And so it seems to me that based on what I saw, they knew that they were going to be taking him down after the debate. Now, what their plan is unclear. I do think, again, if I were a Democrat, they've already lost, in my opinion, a big chunk of the black vote. I don't think they ever really had the Hispanic vote in any serious way. But I think their plan, what they should have done is done it legitimately for the last 2 years, and they didn't. I think their plan is backfired. Either that, or it's this great, sort of three-dimensional chess, and we just don't understand the game that's being played. But if it is, it looks like they're blowing it. It just doesn't feel. It wasn't like this, "Oh, you sly dogs, I see what you just did." If they had knocked him out of the game the next day, if he was, on his way out the door, even Time Magazine's cover that said "Panic," big red cover, it was like Time Magazine handed a canvas to every memer in the world saying, "Here, put funny shit in this big red spot." Right? And every single one of his supporters said it's time to go. And the uniformity of that was just too obvious to me. So I think sometime back they decided that the debate, and the debate was accelerated. Maybe they thought Trump wouldn't accept it, but he did. Then the debate questioners seemed to ask legitimate questions. And so they weren't told to try to go easy on him, I don't think. And so I think the plan is that they would knock him out of the race, that within a day or two, Team Biden would fold their hand, and Jill would do what she should have been doing years ago, and that is saying, "Come on, Jill, let's go visit the grandchildren. Let's go out on the beach where you like to sit in the sun, and you did what we asked you to do. You got Trump out of there in 2020. You held down the fort. Let the young guys take it from here," right? That's one could argue that then he becomes pseudo hero if it looks like that's what he did. But now they're saying, "No, I'm not leaving." Now the Democrats are having to play, they're having to backpedal like crazy, and they smell blitz now. And so now they're saying, "Oh, he had a bad night." And there's all these crazy claims saying, "No, he didn't have a bad night. That was not a bad night." And then, and I think they thought they could blow Team Biden out of there. I think they thought they could say it's time to go now. And the problem is, I don't have a number, but I wouldn't be shocked if there were, 500 people who lose their job because he steps out of the White House. Right? There's all these staff and all these guys who have specific jobs that are tied to the Biden presidency. And it could be even bigger than that. I just don't know the complexity of the political system, but it could be a huge number, and they all want him to get reelected. Now, Jill is the most irresponsible to me, because her job is to do what Nancy Reagan would do, and that is she tried to protect Ronald Reagan against all foes. And I think Jill has completely butchered that. I think she must be a psychopath in her own way. Because if I'm that far gone, my wife's job is to get me the hell out of there. Right? What do you think? Tell me where I'm wrong.
No, I agree with a lot of what you said. I don't know why Trump agreed to do it early. They don't want to bump Biden out of the race at that point. I feel like,
I think he thought it was that, or he wouldn't get to do it.
right. They probably held it like that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they
I
didn't
think he
work it
said,
out with
"Okay, I'm
Biden
taking it."
beforehand to walk off.
And Trump, by the way, also has been giving so many speeches. I don't think he prepared it all, because the parts of the debate where he would deliver a brilliantly orchestrated thing were not brilliantly orchestrated. So I think Trump said, look, I speak 5 times a day. I'm going to beat this guy, free balling it.
Right.
And his handlers probably tried to help him, but he probably said, I'm busy.
Right. And he's probably trying to come across more moderate this time, or calmer.
And I think he did. So, and then the question is he more moderate, or is he learning to play the game, or is he maturing? I'm actually optimistic he's maturing.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute in terms of maybe future looking with Trump. But it feels like all of this now pales in comparison to what happened this past weekend. And
what happened?
Right? And I thought you could have a lot of conspiracies coming out of the debate. But what's your take on Saturday in Pennsylvania, in Butler, Pennsylvania?
Well, I don't think it's simple. Let's start there. I don't think the guy was some solo gunman. There's so many reasons why he should not have had even the remotest sense that he could climb up a ladder, climb on the roof, and shoot at the president through a direct shot with the wrong gun. Right? There's a ton of things that don't make sense. And I can entertain almost any possibility at this point. So, for example, I would like to see proof that Trump got hit in the ear. If he got hit in the ear, Trump's off the hook. Right? That means the story's not about Trump faking it. Without evidence that he got hit in the ear, I'm willing to entertain the possibility that he went up and went whack with one of those blood capsules and faked the whole thing. And you go, well, people got killed, people got shot. And I go, oh, I don't doubt they did that. Right? I saw evidence suggesting that he didn't have a capsule in his hand, but I actually saw evidence suggesting he did. Actually, when he went after his ear, when he put his hand down by the podium, and it looked like he kind of dropped something. That seems to be a lower probability event. When I first saw it, the whole thing looked staged. Mm-hmm. If Secret Service really held the door open and tried to facilitate an assassination, this is serious business. And it's not being treated as serious business. It's being treated as a political fight again. Right? The Democrats saying, oh, he's hosing this, he's doing that, he brought it upon himself, that sort of thing. That's insane. If you're a Democrat and if you're one of the people who said, they've got to learn to aim better, if you're rooting for him to get killed, you're an idiot. You're demented. You're a pathetic human being. And it's not because you hate Trump. I get hating Trump. But it's because you're supporting assassination of a U.S. president. You're supporting a system that would ultimately destroy the U.S. system if it became, the age of emperors in Rome, right? 50 Roman emperors died in 50 years. We do not want to go back to that. So if you really think it would have been good if he got killed, if I get wind of you, I'm blocking you and I'm never talking to you again. I'm done with you. And I think some people in the excitement of the moment type some shit that they probably go, no, I probably shouldn't have typed that last night. So I'd give them a one bite rule. I'd say, okay, you get to back it out. Both instances, both the debate and the attempted assassination, there's pundits who have more explaining to do than I think they can possibly explain. I mean, so if you were saying Biden's as sharp as a tack, I talk to him all the time, and you're a liar. You should be fired from whatever job that pays you to supposedly tell us the news. You should be canned today. You should be canned the day after the debate. Someone should have said, no, you're gone now. You are of no value to this network because you blew it that badly. Joe Scarborough, holy Jesus, he and Mika should be sent on an ice floe, right? But that's the kind of language that gets you in trouble if you take it just one step further and say, I wish he'd aimed better. And so I'm willing to give those people a one bite rule, but if they're chronic spewers of the media has a responsibility of telling the truth, in my opinion. They can spin it a little, but they do have a certain responsibility. And if you're just absolutely unwilling to tell the truth when push comes to shove, then you should be fired. All of them. Anyone involved should be fired. If Joe Scarborough is such a great example. I mean, he really is just garbage of a media guy. You say, oh, he's just a talking head, right? And a person on the left could look at maybe someone like Sean Hannity, say the same thing. I don't know, but I don't see the stuff said about Biden. I don't see all the lies. I think the laptop was real. I think there's things that were really bad. $200 billion to Ukraine. I don't forgive any politician who voted for that. There's 500,000 dead Ukrainians because we let this war linger. We let this war linger. So I'm really mad at that. Today, Grant Williams posted a tweet from Ben. Come on. Oh my God. Epsilon theory. Come on, Ben. Ben
Ben
come
Hunt.
on. Hunt. This is old age. This is Biden setting in. He said, hate the system, be sad, let it motivate you, but don't hate the other person. So don't hate your mirror image, right? That's where we're breaking right there, is when I look at some guy who hates Trump and loves Biden and hate him. I have tremendous disdain for the juggernaut of these various power structures which are steering us off a cliff. But I shouldn't hate, I have 29 or 30 colleagues, and I would say probably 27 of them would vote for Biden. I can't hate them, right? They might be able to hate me. I don't know. It's possible, but I think the evidence supporting Team Biden being awful is way better than the evidence supporting Trump being awful. That's my opinion.
The event just raised so many questions. It was on Twitter very fast. There seemed to be a lot of live coverage of this particular rally.
Yeah.
More than others.
Yeah, it was in the middle of nowhere, and there's live network news there.
Yeah, for what seemed like a very small Trump rally, or smaller than some of the other ones. Yeah, it seemed like they were in a sandbox.
Why?
Yeah, and what was strange about that was when it happened, I kind of had the same reaction that you had. He reached for his ear. Did he pop a blood capsule? He's got the reality TV background. He's got the WWE background.
Right.
I do have the same sentiment around, probably that's very low probability the more I look at. But the more I look at the shooter, it's very strange how easily, he's on top of the building they're in. The counter sniper headquarters seems to be in.
He has no Facebook page. He has no history.
All of this.
That BlackRock commercial is really irrelevant, but.
Right. The witness testimonies
as a pixel.
All very strange. I don't know if you noticed that the photographer who took the picture of Bush on 9/11 getting the whisper in his ear was the same photographer who was at the Trump rally, who got a lot of
Really?
those great shots. Yeah, I just saw that today.
I saw something about that and I didn't know.
Because the pictures
I,
are perfect, which
I
was
thought
also
I thought that was a guy. I read something, but it wasn't the Bush whispering. It was a whole nother event. I wonder if there's a third event that he's the man on the
and this is all
scene.
unconfirmed. I mean, I saw it on Twitter.
Yeah,
But
I
the pictures
know.
are perfect.
Right.
What was really perfect was the one where they raise him from off the deck, and they give the shooter another clean shot at the face. I don't know if they got the all clear by then, but that's really breaking protocol to give him
Hey,
the perfect moment to say fight, fight, fight.
I'm not convinced that the Secret Service would have the chutzpah to be able to fight Trump from rising up. He's a big boy. He's a big boy.
Sure.
They can think he's going to rise up and then sort of slouch his way out, and all of a sudden he shoots up and says, "Fight, fight, fight." I don't know how you stop that. So that doesn't trouble me. The chicks who did a poor job, I'm not convinced they were as far off from doing what they should have been doing. They were whizzing around and looking chaotic, but one of the things you'd be told to do is whiz around and look for shooters from every imaginable direction. It did not help the DEI program of the Secret Service, nor did the interview of the director of the Secret Service help. And I noticed that Trump went to the next one. What was the next one? Come on. Holy fuck. I've been driving all day. So as I told you, I got a missing tooth from yesterday and I'm a little out of it. But convention, he had all male Secret Service. It was noticeable. I think it wouldn't shock me if the people in charge of handing out Secret Service protection handed Trump all the losers. Right? So Trump might have been constantly battling getting decent Secret Service agents. And, Kennedy couldn't even get him until the day after. And then he finally got him, which is an embarrassment and a half. And so.
Why would he want him now?
Good question.
That's a joke, but
I think it's better than none. But they did. If they held the door open, it produces a false security that might be more dangerous than if you're right. If you think you've got great studded snow tires, you might drive faster on ice.
It was all a perfect miss. The photographer who I believe or heard was the Bush photographer is the one who caught the whizzing bullet. And he's the one who caught Trump, coming out of it with the perfect flag.
Iconic. Yeah,
balancing the photo.
The iconic.
With all the Secret Service people looking down while Trump's looking up. All of it's perfect. It's the perfect miss for a really easy shot. So
there's no chance that roof wouldn't have had Secret Service guys on it.
They were in the building. The Secret Service.
There's no chance.
Correct.
And the fact that they had the guy in their sights for some number of seconds, which seems debatable, but it's not 2 seconds. It's not even 5 seconds. It's either 42 seconds or a minute and 37 seconds. It's enough where if a guy said, "Look, I don't have the first shot right," and someone told me that was true. Someone sent me an email and said, "My son's a sniper," and you ask, depending on your situation you're in, like that, you have to get permission. So the sniper doesn't have necessarily a blank check to take someone out. He doesn't like what he's seeing. And you can imagine why, right? I mean, you can imagine saying, "Oh, look, some hippie climbed up on the roof to get a better view and they shot him in the forehead." Really? Right? That wouldn't go well either. So, but when he called it in and it's clear they were watching the guy, Trump never should have been standing up there. They should have said, "Get him down. We got a shooter."
Right.
Even if you don't want us to shoot him, get him down, right? And that appears to have been stonewalled. Then there's a strange phenomenon. There's some very strange things. Like, for example, I posted there was supposedly something written by the shooter saying, "Look, my name is so and so. I'm the guy up in the roof that's now a famous picture." He said, "I repeatedly tried to get permission to take the shot, and they would not give it to me." And that was curious. I got it from Judge Napolitano. So now, does the judge necessarily know that's legit? No. but it's not like getting it from some guy named Dave34215 on Twitter, right? And someone else fell for it too. Oh yeah, I watched McGovern and that Johnson guy, the two ex-CIA guys who are being interviewed by who was the interviewer? I can't remember. And Johnson took that seriously, supposedly. He fell for it, supposedly. So let's say it's not real. But I posted it and I wrote, "This is curious," which is my, if I'd really just flat out believed, I would have said this is unbelievable.
Right.
But I said this is curious, right? I'm saying just put this in the back of your head. Don't lose track of it, right? And I got bombarded with attacks on Twitter. And these were attacks not from people I know saying, "Dave, I think you're reaching, blah, blah, blah." They were not personal. They were robots. They were bots. But the speed with which the bot showed up and the hostility with which they showed up and the homogeneity of that came from 4chan, you're a clueless idiot sort of thing. All these people saying it came from 4chan, I go, I don't think I have that many people following me who also care and saw 4chan, right? And so I think AI picked up on anyone who tweeted that, probably got bot attacks. Who is it? Cheryl Atkinson posted something about the chicks doing a bad job, and she got bombarded. Right? You can imagine the feminists not liking Cheryl saying that. And she said, "Look, I'm just telling you, they did a bad job." And so I think the bots were out there slamming certain narratives. The question is why, right? Because someone trained the bots to do that. There's the weirdest. Let me tell you the weirdest one of all. I mean, flat out the weirdest, and it's one that I wouldn't have taken seriously. Do you know what QAnon is? Do you know what it is? Because I don't.
Just roughly, no, I don't. I would say
How would you describe it? How would you describe it if you had to take your best guess?
It's the hypothesis that there's the white horses or the white hats in the Trump administration who are going to save the world and take down the global cabal. And
now, is that QAnon or is that just one of QAnon's beliefs? That's the thing I don't know.
I wouldn't know that.
I wouldn't either. So in any event, so you can be watching some video about some dark topic, and then all of a sudden the QAnon shit appears at the end, and there's Trump standing with a row of generals, and they say, he's going to come in and save the United States. I go, oh, for fuck's sake, right? Come on, don't do this to me. And one of their most outlandish claims turns out to be that that JFK Jr., not Bobby, John, is alive and incognito, and he's waiting.
Vincent Fusca.
Vincent Fusca. And that's been on my radar for probably 3 years. And I have considered that to be preposterous, right? That's just it annoys me when it shows up, because I go, now I can just stop listening, because whatever you were trying to tell me before, now you lost your credibility. But Vincent Fusca, and of course he would have a persona if he was incognito, so you don't know for sure, but I'd happily bet a paycheck. So he's been coming on and off my radar for probably 3 years now. And it's just so bizarre. And then it turns out that Vincent Fusca was sitting right behind Trump that day. And then so you go, okay, look, I don't care if it's JFK Jr., but this is this guy who's been now created as a legend, who's somehow going to play some legendary role, and he could be totally something else. But that totally something else, whatever he is, was there that day. And when you watch him, and I've watched it from several angles, so it's not AI putting him in or anything like that. Every cell phone image, everything has him in it. And Trump starts getting shot, and everyone starts going nuts, and he just sits there. Stone cold, calm, sits there. And then at some point where people are all bending, rubbernecking, trying to see if Trump's okay, he's on his phone. He's doing something with his phone. And I'm thinking, what's he typing? You missed? What's he doing? And then he starts acting like the crowd. But you saw some of those videos, right? I can tell you
Yeah,
did because you knew the name.
yeah. I
What's your
saw
take on
him,
that?
and
What's your
I mean,
take?
there was a lot of strange things I saw even before the crowd reactions. You don't know how people would react to fireworks, to gunshots, to any of it.
Right.
There were strange things.
But he's the only guy who sat still.
No, there was a girl who kind of sits down. She smiles or smirks like right before the bullets go by, and maybe as one nicks his ear, and then like she just creeps down and puts her phone up, and she's calm as can be the whole time. She's another one.
That's interesting. I
Very
didn't see
strange.
her.
And there was one guy, but he seemed to be just looking around. But most people seemed calm at first for the first 5 or 6 bullets. I mean, even the counter snipers.
And the bullets took too long.
Yeah, it was a lot of bullets.
They were not just a da 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 smack.
Right.
They spread out over quite a long time.
Yeah.
And so to the extent the snipers had them in their sights, and there's no reason to doubt that. Is that right in your opinion?
Yeah, they definitely had him in sights. It seemed like for at least
like a minute,
10 seconds before, if not, I've heard 42 seconds to 2 to 3 minutes before.
The second they got the first audible,
right? And radio in, is he on our team or not? They got a gun.
Right.
And what was weird is that guy on that roof who allegedly shot the gun, he didn't seem to get fired from the front. In all the pictures I've seen, it doesn't seem like he took shots from the front.
He doesn't have a face shot.
Yeah, it doesn't have a face shot. You would think that's where.
And that's the only thing you'd be seeing.
Correct. You would think it would be face down, face shots.
Face in his shoulder, maybe.
Right. And I know the guys who went up on the roof to look at him, I mean, they had cameras on their helmets. So I would love to see that. It was such a perfect miss. And you got all the perfect camera work, pictures, all of it, reactions from specifically Trump. But,
now some official source came out and said the reason they didn't have counter snipers on that roof is because they didn't want to put them on a steep roof.
Too slow. Yeah. Oh, look at the White House roof.
Too slope, right? Too much slope, and I think it was Rudy tweeted something about he won't go down a wheelchair ramp because it's just too steep. Right. And if you and I went to that site, they said, look, you got to tell Secret Service where to go in this thing. You guys map it out. You and I, within 10 minutes, would have the roof of that building on our list of to-dos.
It looked like the site was designed for a hit.
It was right in front of the guy.
Yeah. And my speculation is he didn't use the ladder, that he went in the building and they let him up through the attic stairwell.
Well, but there are videos of him shimmying his way up the roof.
Up the side or up the roof?
Up the roof.
Using the ladder?
No.
Right?
No.
There's no video of him going up the ladder. I mean, I know there's a ladder
there. That's interesting, and there should be.
Right. There's no video of the cop going up the ladder and confronting him.
But you've heard the story a million times.
But
there's
too many eyewitnesses with not enough video.
And then the redheaded guy who talked about how they were trying to draw the attention, he had crisis actor look to me.
Yeah, he didn't take out a phone over the 3 minutes he's yelling. He doesn't have anyone around him. He had no crowd around him during that interview. Where was the party he was coming from?
Right. He reminded me of several other people in situations that I didn't trust. One of them was Stephen Paddock's brother in Vegas, where when they talked to him, there was a kind of an incoherence about him. The woman who went into Uvalde and saved her kids, when they interviewed her, she was, again, speaking in the same odd way. Again, in Mike Kronk in Las Vegas, he was suspicious as shit. So I don't trust the redheaded guy. So if it turns out it really was just a lone shooter, I won't be flabbergasted, but it requires a level of incompetence that I would not have believed possible for Secret Service.
I mean, to touch on the shooter for a minute, I don't believe the lone shooter story.
Well, they gave him the wrong gun for starters.
I mean, even if there was the radical, they wouldn't know where to go. They wouldn't know the exact. I mean,
right?
There would be an internet trail of this person studying where to snipe from, how to snipe, how to scope, all of. And then
the FBI claimed they couldn't get in his phone.
Right.
I go, what? You can't crack a 4-digit PIN number?
Right?
Really?
Brute force that easy.
Well, not only that, but they already have it because the NSA already has it. If the NSA won't give it up on a presidential assassination attempt, then we do have a problem. because you know the NSA would give that up if they pop someone that they cared about.
Right. I want to read something you wrote, though. If you think you know what just happened at the rally, I think you are oblivious to the number of possible layers to this onion. Statistically speaking, you are probably wrong. Here's what I will say. If the deep state wanted Donald Trump dead, he would be dead now. And I agree with everything you said there. And I raise all these just to plead devil's advocacy. I don't believe one thing or the other or know what happened. We're just trying to, and I don't think we'll get there, but we're just trying to peel away the layers here. But if the bullets were real, or if the intention was real to kill Donald Trump,
right?
Because maybe they had their best shooter on there, and the intention was to nick his ear on purpose. I don't know.
I would love to see hard evidence that his ear got nicked.
Right.
That to me is a very, very important piece of information, because I don't think even your best shooter would you want him whizzing a bullet past the guy's head to hit his ear. Right. That doesn't add up. Now I know someone did some shooting because people died, right? That we got. But if you're gonna stage this thing, you go, yeah, we're gonna.
But there's no video of a bystander being hit with the bullet that I know of, like in action. And I'm just playing devil's advocate, right?
I know.
There was no
for all you know,
drone overhead.
The guy who died isn't a real guy. It's like that.
Or they took him to a shed and shot him in the back, like some people have said about Flight 93. And I'm just playing tinfoil hat here.
I know. Well, the problem is in a situation like this, unless it defies the laws of physics, you have to keep it on the table until you can take it off.
Right.
You have to, because there's so many variables.
But in some ways, I see this as a 9/11 event.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll frame that up in the sense that either the United States of America cannot protect presidents.
Right.
And that's like a 9/11, like they can't protect any of us kind of thing. If you can't protect the head guy in charge, like you can't protect any of us, there's going to be serious, probably laws changed around events and different things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of compound on that, I saw Tom Luongo's like, maybe they were going for a twofer. I mean, the guy's using the
fact
AR-15.
that they were proximate to each other. So the fact that Biden was going to be taken out fast and Trump was going to be taken out at this event.
You have two unelected now primary candidates,
and now you get to reinvent the rules.
Right.
So I think Luongo's insight was interesting, because now you say, okay, we didn't just take out one and get weird. We took out both, and now we have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, D. Take your guess.
Right. And we got to take your
guns.
If
both were missing, then all of a sudden there'd be a national crisis, and they would find some way to do the election the way they want. And as Tom said, Nikki Haley versus Hillary Clinton.
Right. So, but if the bullets do hit Trump in the head,
so let's say it was an attempted assassination.
Yeah, and the intention was to hit him,
right?
And they did hit him. Now you have 9/11, but instead of a building, the president's head exploding on lots of recorded live TV.
Right.
And do we have a civil war?
The problem is the Civil War requires some sort of issue to fight over.
Right. And some sort of lines.
I think, Mason-Dixon line, slavery, no slavery, that sort of thing. I think it would cause stress and chaos, but the Civil War argument never makes sense to me, because I can't figure out where's the Mason-Dixon line of the Civil War. Now, it could be like Rwanda, where we all just get machetes out and hack each other up. But more likely, it would seem to me that the purpose would be to sow chaos in the United States and bring us yet closer to a precipice. So not a formal civil war, just people hating each other even more than they do now.
Right. Probably to print money. But I also think, I wonder, and I want to ask you about this. I mean, do you think that, I'm not getting into the real or fake thing, but just in terms of the way the event happened, and we don't know what's coming next, and do you think that this is to drive people towards hero worship of Trump, to put him in that savior position where maybe he's not a savior, maybe he's controlled opposition, and they want us to think he's a savior?
Well, that goes on the assumption he didn't get hit. That
right. So let's say
you'd have to argue he didn't get hit.
Yeah.
If he didn't get hit, if the whole thing was staged, go anywhere from just Trump teeing it up somehow, Trump and his buddies, but
That's
not
a hard
necessarily
one to
just.
pull off without the deep state, it seems like. With
No, that's right. That's right.
I
That's
mean,
right.
this which makes me think then if that's the case, the deep state wants us to think that he's a savior or swing the pendulum back.
Or they cut deals with him and they said, "Look, Donna, we'll let you be president. Here's how we're going to do it."
Because I'll throw another one at you. Today, the leak, RFK's son, RFK Jr.'s son, leaked video of his dad. And it was his dad on the phone with Trump. And Trump's, did you see this?
No, I've been on the road all day.
Oh, man. Okay. So right in the morning, it's like RFK Jr.'s son is like, hey, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if this is illegal. If it's illegal, I want to be Anthony Fauci's cellmate. But then he played a video of his dad talking on the phone with Trump, and Trump saying, hey, we go back a long time. Vaccines are bad, especially for babies. I've seen babies get vaccines that are the size of horse pills and change right in front of my face. You're a good guy. We could work together. And to me, there's no way RFK Jr.'s son leaked this accidentally. They've since taken it down.
No chance.
RFK Jr. said it's an accident.
How old is his son, by the way? How old is his son?
A young man in his 20s.
Okay.
There's no way he's not running to his dad and saying, Dad, do you mind if I do this? But what this does is paint Trump as anti-vax, anti-big pharma, anti-corporate, when he, was head of our Operation Warp Speed.
But that's a different one. See, Trump being head of Operation Warp Speed was where he basically got handed a pandemic, which he first tried to say, look, this is bullshit, ignore it, right? And then he realized he had to flip. And so the guys who hate Trump for supporting Operation Warp Speed, I think they're just wrong on that. I think Trump basically took the guy who everyone said this is the man, Fauci. Trump probably didn't do his due diligence. Probably thought, even if he knew Fauci was a slime ball, he thought Fauci would somehow slime his way into a solution. And why he doesn't say, look, why he doesn't confess that the vaccine's been causing some damage, I don't know. And a lot of people said, Don, just fess up that it caused damage, because there are a lot of people who are pissed off at you for talking about how great the vaccine is. And so I viewed the vaccine story as he was called upon, at least in his head, to get this vaccine. So he delegated to Fauci, delegated to Pence, right? And then he went back to fighting Democrats nonstop. Right? And they kept him busy. So my brother complains, for example, about him not building the wall, and I agree. I mean, that was his biggest plank of his platform, was to build the wall. I think he should have found a way. But he was relentlessly in a fight with very powerful forces. And so I think they had him totally hogtied the whole way. So he couldn't do what he wanted to do while he's fighting. Literally, I mean, the FBI, the CIA, all these guys were going at him hard. And if they're nervous now, they should be. I have mixed emotions about whether I want him to get into power and exact revenge, or whether I want him to get into power and get by it. There's arguments both ways. I would like to see some heads roll for COVID, right? And I'd like to see some heads roll for Ukraine. I know there's people who think we're doing the right thing in Ukraine. You haven't done your homework, in my opinion. If you've done your homework and you think it's not clear, I'm fine with that. But if you've actually studied what's been going on in Ukraine for the last dozen years, you would be at least agnostic, trying to understand what the hell is going on in Ukraine. Most people think, they say, well, people say, well, of course, Putin's guilty. He invaded Ukraine. I go, okay, so you ever seen a street fight? The guy who throws the first punch, is he necessarily the guilty guy? And the answer is no. He's the guy who realizes he's not getting out of it. So he says, I got to knock the guy flat. So I'm going to punch him. That's what I'm going to do. If you're sane, you're not going to give a guy a first punch. So I really think that NATO, pushed Putin to the point where he said, look, I don't have another choice. I put the Ukraine war essentially 100% on NATO. I have very little wiggle room left in my thinking on the Ukraine war. I think Putin tried to get this thing not to happen over and over and over for years, and then it finally happened. He tried to get him to the negotiating table, couldn't get him there. I think the United States wants Putin to waste everything he can possibly waste for an infinite amount of time on Ukraine and blame him. By the way, read Scott Horton's book called Enough Already. It's a tough read. It's almost like an impressionist painting where you say, don't look at the brushstrokes, just stand back. And he talks about our foreign policy. I found out, I listened to a podcast, I was like, oh, I got to go find some more. And I actually found out I'd done one with him. I'd forgotten. It's brilliant. And then he goes through just a suffocating sum of disasters that we have been involved in all over the world for the last half century. Just non-stop, unbelievable garbage. And then sometimes, like, he backed Hillary on Benghazi out of the blue. He surprised shit. He said, no, the Benghazi story turns out to be, it wasn't that Hillary was doing this and this and this. He said what they had to cover up, and therefore they couldn't defend themselves, was they were shipping certain arms to Syrian rebels. And so they couldn't fess up to what the Benghazi story was about. And he lays it all out. So I really trust Horton to be trying to get it right. And that's all I can ever ask anyone. And so again, it all comes back to Trump. These guys, there's a kind of an arrogance to the deep state where they don't think it matters how much they fuck up. And I think we fuck up royally. I'm so convinced now we fuck up royally. We are a superpower. We could have used those resources so much better. You build good weapons. You walk softly. You carry a big stick. What you don't do is bomb the shit out of 50 fucking countries. And the other thing you don't do, Horton made a joke. He said the standing joke was that the CIA-sponsored rebels were now fighting the Pentagon-sponsored rebels. You know, it's just that level of absurdity. So, and if you think, oh, this is bullshit, read Horton's book. Then get back to me and tell me you didn't believe it. Otherwise, you got to shut your mouth because you're ignorant. So, we are doing bad things nonstop. Our foreign policy is awful. And Trump risks undermining that. I think that's one of the big issues. And look what they did to Assange.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just evil. And there's still guys in Guantanamo from 9/11 who are, you know, and they were around. I read probably a half a dozen books post 9/11. What was the deep source was some guy named Cue Ball or 8 Ball or something. I can't remember anymore. But basically, people were saying, you know, that fucking uncle over there, who I think is a douchebag, he's Al Qaeda, and our guys would go round him up and take him off to Guantanamo, right, and torture the shit out of him.
Right.
And I want to be the good guys, and we're not being the good guys. And I'm not some left-wing Bernie Sanders supporting, although Bernie looks better than a lot of these douchebags now. I mean, he I get the feeling Bernie, although I think he's gone a little darker in recent years, but I think he was trying to get it right, admittedly, from the view of a socialist, which is a clueless idiot. But I wasn't bothered by Bernie. Hillary bothered the shit out of me. So this whole Trump thing is so complicated because we don't know who's defending what. As you said, we don't know if Trump's part of the story. He could be the Washington Generals fighting the Harlem Globetrotters, right? That's my favorite metaphor.
That's my favorite metaphor for national politics in our country right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm right. I can't believe you've been on the road all day. So you probably haven't heard about the Iranian plot to assassinate Trump.
I did pick that up this morning before we left.
Right.
Yeah, which is, it's insane.
Yeah.
Like, that's just insane. For one thing, I think the Iranians would really love to have Trump in there.
Right. That's what was my first reaction. The other one was I saw an article about how Trump might be really bad for, if you're sick of Biden inflation, wait for Trump inflation. And I'm
That
not saying
could be a
Trump's good
problem.
for,
That
yeah,
could
I'm
be a
not
problem.
saying, but it's
That really could
interesting
be a problem.
that they're using that because I think the thing people are sick of the most right now is inflation. Um,
That's
Speaking of sort
absolutely
of
true.
Iran, and before we get to inflation, and not Iran specifically, but just sort of the, foreign politics and what's going on with the border. I mean, the last time we spoke, that's what everything was about.
Right.
It now seems it's about presidential politics, unfortunately, or fortunately, every way you look at it. But where do you see the border now? And I mean, it was when Trump was talking and the bullets were whizzing by his head, he was pointing to a chart about
The border.
the border and illegals and what the numbers have been like under different administrations. So it was literally what they were talking about, and sort of what he deemed Biden's effect on the border.
Um, well, there's no question that Trump at no point in his entire presidency suggested to outsiders that they'd be welcome crossing the border, right? It's safe to say that he was very clear that we didn't want to see you, to the point where people said he was a racist. And there's times he with his lack of delicate delivery came off that way. There's times where he said, they'll come over and rape you, and I go, yeah, you're kind of painting Mexicans with a big brush. But now the border, as soon as Biden said, look, we'll take anyone coming across the border. If our opponents, our enemies, the enemies of the United States, are not smart enough to recognize that this is a perfect opportunity to put sleeper cells all over the nation, then they're the dumbest bunch of enemies. We don't even need to worry about them because they're too stupid. So the numbers projected for this year are 4 million. I read an article again. We all suffer from not knowing fact from fiction now. I never would have thought that I would doubt. I'm now at the 2 + 2 = 4, I think. But there was some city, one of the cities in Ohio or something, a town of 55,000. They said they dumped 20,000 illegals in there. Have you seen that article?
I saw something. I don't remember if it was in
You know
Ohio,
if
but I
that's
saw something like
true?
that.
Do you know if that's
Yeah.
true?
I don't know if that's true. These
But
numbers
if it
are
is
astounding.
true, then I've told friends here, I said, look, if they bring 3 busloads
Right.
of immigrants into Ithaca, it will change Ithaca in a profound way. Just 3 busloads. Because all of a sudden you won't be able to go downtown without worrying about some guy from some faraway place who couldn't give less of a shit about you attacking you.
It just, yeah, it seems like the odds of random violence are increasing, specifically in the denser places.
And now they've weaponized the justice system. So a guy like Daniel Penny, who should be a hero, is now fighting for his freedom. Daniel Penny, for those who forget, choked the guy in the subway who said he was going to kill everybody. And everyone who witnessed it said he was a hero. And if Daniel Penny had pulled out a gun and blown his head off, I'd be fine with that. It wasn't just that he choked him and overdid it. I mean, if he wanted to blow his head off, I do not care. If the guy comes in the subway and says, I'm going to kill everybody, that guy, as far as I'm concerned, is committing suicide.
And take that logic and apply it to the counter sniper on the roof who waited 12, I don't know, 8 or 12 shots before he fired back. Like, I don't care if you have permission from headquarters.
Right. But if for 2 or 3 minutes you're saying you cannot take that shot, now all of a sudden that could put a hesitation in your skull.
Sure. Yeah. Daniel Penny didn't have a headphone on with.
Well, Daniel Penny also choked the guy for 90 seconds, not 15 minutes. There's that. So the point being is now you're told, look, if you do anything, if you use physical force for any reason, you could be looking for many years in jail, even though you are morally profound.
Right.
And that's a real problem, which means, therefore, if there's some guy, in your hometown who's, sort of committing violent acts. I saw a video of a guy walk past a subway stairway, New York or someplace like that. Some woman's just starting to go down and he's talking on the phone. He walks by her and he shoves her right down the stairs. I would be okay if someone who saw that just hauled off and killed the guy.
Right.
I mean, I would be, if I were on the jury, that guy would not be convicted. There's no chance that's why I would never be on a jury, of course. But there's things worse than murder, actually. Right? That's a senseless, violent act that to me is more than, killing your husband or your wife at some level. And I know that killing your husband or your wife's not good, but that's a complicated story. Right? You don't know, you need to see the plot to understand how that went so badly. Guy walking past the subway, there's no complexity to that. That guy does not deserve to live, as far as I'm concerned. And you don't want to be judge, jury, and executioner. But if some guy does it, I'm not convicting him. And I sure as hell would love it if the guy put a Louisville Slugger into his kneecap and brought him to the ground long enough for the cops to finally show up. That would be great. But that guy might be charged with assault because the Biden administration has and I used to sort of scoff at George Soros stories, but he has planted a lot of prosecutors in a lot of low-level places to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, Chicago. I'm not saying Soros, but what's going on with law and order in Chicago and the way the courts have interpreted things.
Right. So this Chevron deference case in the courts, in theory, it's a profound case. In practice, it'll be ignored, I think.
Doesn't it take a lot of power away from regulators who basically
only if you can drag them all through the courts?
Back to court, right?
Right. Who's got the financial firepower to drag all? How many regulators do we have? Something like 28% of the jobs in this country require a license. That means 28% of the people in this country are sort of under the auspices of regulators. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. And then another 28% work are the regulators.
And then you got Biden, who was told by the highest court of the land, you can't forgive student loans. You don't have the authority, and he did it anyways. So to me, that's treason. There are worse forms of treason. But when the Supreme Court says you can't do that, as far as I'm concerned. Now, if you read about the history of the Bill of Rights and stuff, it's an interesting history. When it first started out, it wasn't clear how much power the court was supposed to have. I think it was Jefferson. There was some court case that Jefferson was had both shoulders behind. And it turned out I think it was Jefferson who opposed giving the court power, but the court ruled in his favor on this really important case. And so he kind of had to say, oh, fuck, okay, I'll let them have that power because they just did what I needed them to do. They kind of bribed them. But I don't think you can unwind the administrative state with a Supreme Court decision. I don't think I just think that they'll just keep doing what they do.
Well, kind of going back to the illegals though. I'm really curious. Do you think last time we spoke, I think we were trying to guess what the point of having the open border was. Obviously, it's a great fight between the generals and the Globetrotters. And
so the question is, what's the point?
I think there's a lot of corruption.
The bad guys who want to open it, or supposedly, what's the point of our guys opening it?
Well, I think. Well, my question though is going to be more pointed. But I think that everyone's making money on the trafficking, whether they're for or against it. The Texas governor sends, the illegals to Chicago, so he gets to rail against illegals. The governor of Chicago, of Illinois, and the mayor of Chicago take in the illegals and set up camps and hotels, and there's all money being made. There's corruption, right? It's huge. In fact,
one of the arguments,
and they get to fight over it politically, right? But do you think last time we spoke, you felt that they're not here to vote?
And I now have to take that back.
It seems like there's not a lot of ways to prevent them from voting.
I just didn't believe there was anything within our legal system that gave them the right to vote. And now they're just giving them the right to vote, which is back to my view of the administrative state. They just say, fuck that. We're giving them the right to vote.
Right. And it seems
you
like
can't
I mean,
stop them. Who do
well,
you throw in jail when they try to hand out the right to vote? How do you deal with that?
right. No, and they're literally replacing the votes of the communities they're marginalizing. That's the way I would see it.
So there's a metaphor here. It's like a teacher in a tough Chicago school district. There are rules. Try to tell her she has any power to enforce them. She's running a classroom where there's not a single kid in the entire school district who's reading at proficiency. And you're trying to tell a teacher who's in one of those classrooms that there's rules that they have to enforce. They're just trying to get through each day without getting the crap kicked out of themselves. And so I think it seems that we have to have some cathartic thing where we finally, where the people who really would like to make things get fixed finally get forced to do it. So right now the good guys haven't fielded a team. I don't think they're not opposing the shit they got to oppose, and I'd like you get the guys at Walmart who caught a guy stealing out of Walmart and they used zip ties and tied him up and called the cops and stuff like that. But did you see the article where supposedly Newsom pressured Target not to report shoplifting because he wanted the stats to look better? I beat Newsom with a Louisville Slugger, right? I believe frontier justice was there for a purpose. In a lawless world of Dodge City, in a lawless world of the frontier, you didn't have the luxury of guys in wigs and robes and shit making big decisions. You had hanging Judge Bean come into town and he'd say hang him, and they'd hang him, right? And some guy comes riding down your road to your farm, and you don't know him. You're at great risk, right? You're out in the West, you're at great risk. And if in doubt, you blow his head off. Because for every 5 guys you let show up without defending yourself, one of those 5 is going to hurt you.
Right.
And so I was watching a show about Hudson Bay Colony and a Hudson Bay Colony in 1720, and some guy was a douchebag. And it struck me that it didn't make sense. He was a high up guy. But if you're a douchebag in a relatively lawless place, I don't think your life expectancy is going to be very good. So I think in places like that, people learned not to cause trouble, right? Unless they had superpower and had an army and had, right? So a kingdom with his knights and his armies and stuff like that. But it's just that run-of-the-mill douchebag, you do something to some guy's daughter, he's going to come and deal with you. So I think you learn not to stick your head up. That's my guess. I read Steven Pinker's book. They had ways of dealing with people that were truly unimaginable. And he at one point he said, I could be standing face to face with Adolf Hitler, and I wouldn't think of doing that to a guy. Right? So I think frontier justice may wander back. The guys who were squatters, are those stories real? Probably, right? Mm-hmm. How would you handle a squatter? Let's say a squatter moved in your house while you're on vacation. You call the cops, you're not getting any help. What would you do?
I don't know.
I'd go in with a gun. I'd jam it in his face. I'd say, if I see your face anywhere near this house, you're going to die at that moment. We're not going to have this discussion again. Get out of the front door of the house, never come back, or you will die. That's how I'd handle it.
How do you know you outgunned them? How do you know you go in there?
Because I have a gun in my hand.
But how do you know you're not going in there with 16 people with guns?
I don't. Oh, you'd have to be a little more tactical. You'd have to know what actually is happening. But a lot of these squatters are actually not super powerful people. They just think they have the law on their side. And I go, you're confusing me with someone who actually thinks you always follow the law. I think there's times where you don't.
Of course.
Right? Well, of course, but a lot of people say, well, that's an excuse. If let's say this podcast gets out, I could get canceled at Cornell. I'll sit
in
across
terms
from
of
the fucking
morality
provost and defend
ethics.
myself. Yeah, morality is all I care about.
Yeah.
My wife sometimes says you shouldn't speed. I go, you smoked pot when it was illegal. Who cares? Right? I speed, you smoke pot. We're even.
I mean, the whole what a leader or a father is supposed to do is protect and lock down the house.
That's right. Castle doctrine.
Yeah. And not having borders is literally not locking down the house.
Right.
You know, you have someone who's not performing their role.
So they tried to impeach Mayorkas. Oh, nowhere near enough for me. I would charge Mayorkas with treason. Why is it not treasonous? It's an invasion. He was in charge of the border. It's an invasion. It's treasonous. And I think one of the reasons they're losing the black vote is because I think the black community gets this shit. Right? They
will
live
it
in tough
matter
neighborhoods.
will that voting block, not they, I didn't mean, will that voting block matter if illegals
if
can
they
vote?
don't count the vote? Yeah, I don't know.
Or if they don't count votes. I mean,
look at what's happening in Europe. I mean, Europe's a mess. Sweden's now a dangerous country.
I can't see how. I mean, I talk about a slope. I mean, I think we're on a very slippery slope. That
very.
I don't think anything. I don't think illegal is going to be deported.
No,
I don't
hard.
think this
Too
election
hard.
matters in terms of that. What's really interesting right now, I mean, I want to ask you about markets. I mean, the markets are still kind of they bounced
happy
on the weekend. They're happy.
They're happy. Someone described the markets as like watching a bunch of 5-year-olds play soccer. All offense, no defense. The guy in the cage isn't paying attention. So at some point, this is what people don't understand. Markets have never gotten overvalued and not eventually regressed to and through the mean. Never in the history of markets ever has that happened. Now, it's complicated because you can't price either A, gold, or B, Bitcoin. Those are opinions, right? There is no, if you say, well, gold's used for, electronics, I go, no, it's not. And no, that's the guys who try to make a utilitarian argument for gold are out of their minds. The gold supply above ground could supply the electronics world with enough gold for the next 50,000 years, right? It's just not used. Silver is a better argument for that. Silver is way better argument. But equities have a history of returning a revenue stream. You're buying a revenue stream. And if the revenue stream is below that of the price of inflation, those equities are priced poorly. And eventually people will say, I can't win owning these equities at this price. And therefore they'll sell. And there's a historical return that you can use as a benchmark. And if you want to pick one, any valuation metric that you follow from, say, either 1920s or 1880s up to my stop point is 1994. So if you take the 100 years from 1894 to 1994, and you have a valuation metric, price to earnings, price to book, price to you name it. There's dozens of them. It turns out they just go back and forth. They don't. There's no trend. If there's a trend, then it's saying that over time, society is willing to pay less and less and less for a revenue, pay more and more and more for a revenue stream. Now, there is an argument for that. If we are not producing much shit, but we've got a lot of people trying to, so you're growing a pizza pie at 2% a year. That's about the rate of GDP growth. People don't know that either. GDP grows about 2.2% a year over a very long period of time. If the population is growing faster, or if the investing population is growing faster, you've got more people trying to eat a pizza.
Right.
And so you're getting smaller and smaller slices per dollar, per effort you put in to earn the money to buy the pizza. But what is true is for those 100 years I just cited, that the markets are valued to return somewhere in the high, sort of medium high single digits. Buffett says, 1999 article, you can't expect after you're done with all the fees and crap, you can't get above an inflation. You can't get above 4%. You can't expect more than 4. I think Buffett's saying you can't. I can, but that's because I'm smart. But the average person, the market collectively can't make more than 4%. And it turns out that most of the gains in the 20th century, if you correctly inflation adjust, almost all of the gains are dividends. And the dividends over the 20th century averaged about 4%. Now, Buffett's number does not include taxes. You start taxing that 4%, you really are, now you're really down. Now you're really returning almost nothing. And the average investor doesn't know this. And so they have been living in a utopian world from 1994 to the present, where the markets continue to get more highly valued every goddamn year. That's like saying, I'm buying lumber, putting it away to sell in my retirement. But every year you're paying more and more and more for the lumber. And at some point, you go to sell it and you go, well, right. So right now, using say Case-Shiller, the markets are priced to return 3%. But that doesn't include fees. It doesn't include taxes, right? So the average boomer thinks they're going to get 8 and somehow hasn't done this math, or 10 or whatever, or they're just going to own NVIDIA. They're out of their minds. It can't work. It never has. And I like to describe, if you take, I was on a podcast the other day where the guy booted up the chart and I had to talk him through it. If you sit on 1906 peak and you ask, when did the markets last reach that same inflation adjusted price? So the markets go up and down, and sometimes the highs come down and they tip the lows. And from 1906 to 1981, the inflation adjusted, the markets did not move a dollar. From 1929 to 1993, the markets didn't move a dollar. So if you are owning at the top, the next 40, 50, 60, 70 years, they may flop around. You might be able to trade it like, Stan Druckenmiller. But you're going to look up 40 years from now and say, we haven't gone anywhere. Because peak to trough, peak to last trough is brutal. I think we are going to go down comfortably below 2,000 inflation adjusted in the S&P, comfortably. We could get down to 1,000 inflation adjusted S&P. I think the next low could easily get down to 2,000, year 2000, easily down to year 2000. We can easily give up 25 years gain. That's only 25 years. So, right, based on what I just told you, that might not even be real. For all I know, we're going to go back and touch the 1929 peak, inflation adjusted. That's not my bet, by the way. My bet is, however, that we'll look up 40 years from now, we will have not moved anywhere. Assuming they regress to a reasonable valuation. But if they don't, they just go to the stratosphere and say, okay, I'm going to fly a plane and we're going to fly it at 50,000 feet. Good luck with that model. Because you're also, like NVIDIA, right? It's trading at 50 times revenues. So if every penny of revenue goes into your pocket, you're getting 2% from the current price. And you go, oh, but NVIDIA's, AI and blah, 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 I'm going to make a fortune. I go, like, their customers, as soon as times get tough, are going to say, sorry, we don't need those chips now. Many of their customers are startups that don't have 1 penny of revenue. They haven't figured out how to monetize AI. I'm not convinced AI is good news even. So monetizing it might be a job. When the internet came, it was clear it was important. But the internet was clearly everyone but Krugman noticed that. But AI is not at all obvious to me. It scrapes dog shit off the floor, right? AI is like some machine that goes and scrapes shit off an Arthur Daniels Midland factory floor and packages it up, makes patties out of it. And there might be economies there, but there's also some nasty ass potential too. For starters, would you be happy if you never saw another AI generated artwork?
Yeah, definitely.
They're soulless. They're soulless. Yeah. Do you want to read articles, not know if some computer wrote the article for you? I don't want to find out Glenn Greenwald's a supercomputer. If you found out, there's a famous art historian who noticed something fishy in the 17th century Dutch masters, where they really mastered realism. I mean, you go, wow, look at that. That's unbelievably realistic and shit like that. And they got everything just right. He noticed that at that same time, in that same region of geography, they invented what's called the camera obscura, which is basically a projector. And it projects an image on the wall. It's like an overhead projector. And the only thing about the camera obscura is that it reverses the image. I noticed behind me, my Hewlett Packard turns out to be backwards. Somehow it inverts the image. And so he went through all the paintings and he said, let's take all these famous realistic paintings and let's take only the ones that you can say that guy is right-handed or left-handed. He's got a pen, he's holding a book, he's eating, right? 7-1 left or right. The art world shit their pants because he was saying that they were tracing the goddamn paintings. Now, I don't really give a shit. But if you're in anthropology and some guy discovers some new form of hominids that doesn't make sense, they attack him like a dog. We want the human component. I don't think we want AI. I don't think society wants AI. Maybe it helps you write your email a little faster or something, but it's also the computing power needed for AI is a horrifying contradiction to the green energy movement.
Right.
And so I don't think there's anyone who's really looked at it who thinks you can do both AI and solar panels and wind farms.
Right.
Which I think is a big hoax. So I think at some point we'll give up on that too. I think we're going back to nukes and fossil fuels, and to the extent you can still do it, hydroelectric.
Yeah. Speaking about all this inflation and the money, and the recent assassination attempt on Trump, do you think it has to do with the money? You could look at Lincoln. Some say, he wanted to go off of, onto a gold standard or hard money standard. Kennedy talked about going on silver. Reagan, I heard, talked about gold, and it was an attempted assassination of his life.
So, what was it? Libya. Gaddafi wanted to go to a gold dinar.
Yeah, I have a list here. It's Andrew Jackson, 1835, Lincoln, James
Get rid
Garfield,
of the Bank of the United
McKinley,
States, right?
Basically, all these people, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, basically all these people publicly opposed the banking cabal, if you will.
Right.
I think the Trump one's a bit tenuous in the sense
well, for
that
one thing is he loves the banks.
He loves the banks. He loves the dollar. He has nibbled on Bitcoin lately, but when he was in office, he didn't like Bitcoin. He didn't free Ross. He didn't free Julian Assange. He didn't free Snowden.
Yeah, I know.
But he's been talking about Bitcoin lately. He's talked about never allowing a CBDC. He's talked about Bitcoin maybe being considered as a strategic reserve asset. Again, I think just sort of 19th or 18th century politics, buying votes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But do you think that possibly this assassination attempt is related to the money?
Well, it would have to be not only related to the money, but an urgency, because Trump's only 4 years, right? And so if Trump got in there and say, okay, I guess we're gonna look how long it took to put the euro on the map, right? Took decades for the euro to finally launch. And the BRICS is not going to come up with a real BRICS currency for a long time. They might come up with some gold-based one faster, that because the infrastructure is there. You would say maybe a Bitcoin-based one, the infrastructure is there. But I think a BRICS currency is not the debate. I think the BRICS is about alliances. It's not about currencies. It's about alliances. You got 40 countries saying we're not with the United States anymore. We're going with Russia and China, India. And for laughs, we throw in Brazil, but they're not the important one. So I think that we might have people shitting their pants over the BRICS, because that really is, and I blame our politicians for that one too, to the extent that weaponizing the dollar was as stupid can be. And Putin said it clearly. Putin is, to me, the most balanced based world leader in the world right now. He could be a SOB. I mean, he could be a psychopath. He could be murderous. But he's got his shit together more than any other leader. You'd be hard pressed to convince me any of these other guys have their shit together the way he does. Did you see his 3-hour press conference with the international press? Isn't it shocking? You pay attention to this shit, don't you?
I do, but I didn't see it.
He did a 3-hour press conference with press from countries all over the world in the offices of Gazprom. And he took questions from the field for 3 hours. Did you see that on CNN? Did you see that on Fox? Did you see that anywhere? No. Somehow I ran across it. And I read the transcript. You say, okay, the transcript's fake, but it looked like a real transcript. And at one point, some guy, they were asking him open-ended questions like, are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? You know, and he would then go off. But when he was talking about things like defending Russia, and they bring up some missile thing or something, his ability to talk in detail about the weaponry involved in the various players and what can do what has what range and shit like that. And you're sitting there going, could Trudeau do this? Could Biden do this? Could Macron do this? No, none of these. Xi Jinping, maybe, I doubt it. And it never made the press. It was about a month ago, I think. It never made the press, because they don't want people to hear that he has his shit together. And it was really together. And at one point, some guy asked a question, and then he says, well, I've got another, but I'll hold off on it. And Putin says to him, he says, look, I'm not sure you're getting another chance. Better ask it now. So the guy says, okay. And these are writers, leading journalists from Spain and Germany and various countries. It was a table full of people sitting there with Putin, answering them directly for 3 straight hours in Gazprom's headquarters. Someone asked him about a hammer and sickle behind him on the wall. He said, yeah, I noticed that. He says, these are not my headquarters. This is Gazprom. And I know the head of Gazprom, and I think I know why he put it up. But, you know, really straightforward answers. One thing Putin never seems to do is waffle. You ever see him waffle where you get this feeling that he was dodging and weaving and trying to get? No, he just, like when he says, why did you throw that guy in jail? He said, well, he robbed us blind. He's robbing us blind. Now, every Russian's robbing everyone blind, I think. So it's a pretty safe statement, but and we're trying to take out Putin. He's a nationalist. We're trying to take out Trump. He's a nationalist. We're trying to take out Viktor Orban. He's a nationalist. The Malay guy could be next in line to, right? I don't think our deep states want some guy running around balancing the budget in a South American country. We as a nation do not support democracy. That's a complete fiction. We will tolerate democracies that already exist, recognizing that we can't actually take over Germany at this point. But what everyone knows, if you think about it for more than 20 seconds, is that democracies are awkward and in some ways inefficient, uncontrollable, messy. And we would much rather have some guy wearing a white suit, sunglasses, and a cigar sticking out of his mouth and say, look, we'll give you all the weapons you want. You give us all the oil you can. By the way, your boys are our boys. We need to put an Air Force base in your country. You're going to do it. If not, we're going to cap your ass. Have a nice day. And like Horton's book, he talks about how profoundly hard Gaddafi tried to cater to the United States because he knew they were homing in on it. And he said, whatever you want. He offered them anything, and they just decided no, they were going to pop them. Same thing with Saddam. He tried really hard to get out of the Iraq War, and his offers fell on deaf ears, and of course we didn't even hear about him. One point in this press conference, Putin was asked about moving the Warsaw Pact west again. And his answer, you're going to love his answer. He says, so what you're telling me is that I'm going to go against Germany, US, France, Spain, and countless other countries. Do you think I'm nuts? And I'm going, no, I don't think you're nuts. I've never bought any of the arguments that he's going to start taking over countries. He didn't try to take over Ukraine. Anyone who says that is a clueless, uneducated moron. His first military movement into Ukraine was 50,000 troops. You can't take over New York City with 50,000 troops. They wouldn't make it. It was a police action. It was to stop a slaughter of ethnic Russians and to deal with the Azov Nazis. They were a problem. They were a growing problem. So he had to denazify Ukraine. And they're real Nazis. I'm not talking metaphorical Nazis, the kind that like I get called or you get called or whatever. No, these are real Nazis, swastikas, celebrating birthdays of famous Nazis, things like that. And Putin has known for many years that the CIA has been arming these guys and trying to get them ready to go against Putin. And they were starting to kill ethnic Russians in the Donbass region in big numbers, at 10, 15,000, big numbers. And so Putin said, it's time to act. And he went to the Pope to try to stop the war. He went to a lot of people, said, look, this is, but someone said something very scary. He said, Putin never bluffs. He never bluffs. And that means that when he says something, you better take him at his word. And the other thing is, I read a biography of him. It was a very strange experience. So the biography of Putin went through his childhood rise in various levels through the KGB and shit like that. And they said loyalty is everything. But they're not talking about loyalty like Trump loyalty to Trump. They're talking about loyalty going both directions. So when he left the KGB to become politically important, he left the KGB. And they said, no, you don't have, he said, yes, I do. When his wife had a serious health problem, and he was in a position of considerable power, he was not head yet, he had to borrow money to pay for the surgery. So the guys who say Putin's one of the richest guys in the world, show me the evidence. He's living in a palace. Of course he is. I mean, he's in the Kremlin. But show me the money. Show me where he has personally raped and pillaged Russia. Now, if someone does show it to me, I'll go, wow, okay, you got it right. But no one has ever provided the evidence that he's the richest guy. They just make the accusation. Show me a Swiss bank account. Somehow provide something. Zelensky, on the other hand, I really believe probably has a ton of money packed away, right? You'd bet paycheck on that one, I bet.
You would think Putin has more money than Zelensky, though.
Putin has an
Even if it's
odd,
legitimate money, I mean, or
well,
legitimate in the
probably.
Russian sense,
Right.
whatever that means. You know,
I
I'm not
know.
trying to disparage it. I'm just saying, you know, I
No,
don't
no,
think
no,
he got
no,
it
no,
from his
no, no,
public
no.
salary, but I'm sure he has a fortune.
I'm not positive that's true. Like I said, he was high up the system. He had to
Yeah.
borrow money to pay for his wife's health problems.
I'm not saying I believe or don't believe that. At face value, I
It
probably
wouldn't
wouldn't
shock you
believe
if he had a
that.
ton of money,
It
right?
wouldn't shock me if he had a ton of money.
What would be
I'm
a
gonna,
quantity of money that you'd say at this level, that just makes sense to me? You know, Obama's worth 80 million, supposedly.
okay.
From
Sounds a little
nothing.
low. I mean,
Probably.
it's a lot of money, but I bet he's worth more than that even.
But the Clintons are worth way more than that.
Yeah, yep.
Right.
They've had more time
So how much
yeah.
money would Putin have to have for you to say, oh, he really is a skanky bastard? What quantity would it take for you to say, okay, that's above my dotted line for
North of 300 billion.
billion?
Yeah, I think I mean I'd be surprised if he was worth less than several billion as the leader of a resource-rich country, just because how could your leaders not be towards the higher end of the economic spectrum and
Well, in
have more
theory,
skin in the game?
Obama's a leader and he only has 80, although he started with 1, so 80 is a lot.
Right.
But we
he will
don't
probably
know.
die a billionaire.
Right.
And a lot of that's all. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's all bribes.
But that's
it's all book money.
But that's not a horror story either, right? That's not like Imelda Marcos.
But my line for egregiousness would really be around like I bet like I think it's possible it's worth $1 trillion.
Oh, see, I don't think there's a shred of evidence to support that.
No, I'm not saying that I have any evidence, but like
so if he's
if anyone
as bad
could keep evidence from me, though, it would be types like Putin.
Right. So if I agree, if it turns out evidence comes out that he was in that zone, then I'm just dead wrong. If he has plenty of money, I'm not dead wrong. Running Russia, you should be compensated well, and the way the Russians compensate, you know. But I don't know where my cutoff is. If he has less than $1 billion, then he's not raping and pillaging.
I would agree with that.
He's probably getting kickbacks and shit, but he is not leaving Russia, bro. He put it this way: Leon Black is worse than that, right? Our private equity
Elizabeth
guys are worse
Warren's
than that.
Probably worse than that.
Right.
Pelosi's worse than that. I mean,
right.
It's rampant in our country too. I think a lot of the things we hear about the Russian oligarchy is because they don't want us to think about our own oligarchy.
That's exactly right. So I don't know how much he has. I just know that I've never seen evidence of him.
But he is 71, which I just Googled because I mean, he's getting up there now. He's not, you know, he's been around.
How are we going to know where the money goes once he dies? Right. I mean,
or if he gets to even keep the money, that's what,
right.
You know, I mean, that's, I don't know.
If he doesn't get to keep it, then it's not his.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it finances your life until it's gone, but I hear what you're saying. Maybe it comes with the job,
Prince
or maybe
Harry lived in Buckingham Palace. How rich was Prince Harry?
I think he's richer than they let on.
Well, maybe.
I'm just guessing. I don't look into this stuff. I don't care.
No, I know, but
I don't think they're poor.
You have to have access to the money, no questions asked.
Sure.
And so,
well, talking about money, let's get back to the border, and something we talked about a lot the last time. I mean, it's amazing how what was front and center 6 months ago is just not on the tip of everyone's.
Maybe that was what it's all about.
It is maybe.
It's
but what about the missing kids? They're still all missing. There's still way more than we could count, Dave. Right? You didn't find the kids.
Here's the entertaining.
Maybe you didn't find Putin's money, but
I got asked to do a podcast this morning by Nick Bryant. Do you know Nick?
No.
Nick wrote the most definitive treatment on pedophilia networks. And so I'm really hoping to pick more out of Nick's brain than him pick my brain. And one of the things I want to get out of him is say, look, I've been reading all this shit about all these pedophile networks and all this crap. can you help me? Can you put a dotted line around the shit that's bullshit and the shit that's real? Now, he wrote about the Franklin scandal, which is a network out of Nebraska, and it busted open. And the story that busted open was not about the network per se, even though it was important. It was about the deep state's response to when the network broke open, the FBI's response, the Supreme Court of Nebraska's response. They tried to destroy the people who stepped forward. So the whistleblowers got clobbered. And so it's kind of a Rosetta Stone for what happens when one of these pedophile networks busts open. Now, the question is, where do all the kids go? Did we talk about this? Coming over the border, they say 85,000 is the common number. Who the hell knows? But that's a big number, right? And there's footage of people picking people up in vans and carting them away, and they're not taking them to trailer parks. And, you know, you're not selling these kids for $50 a pop. And so if you read about trafficking, and you read, you know, you look at literature from the International Society for Abuse and Missing Children, you know, these very high level organizations that supposedly are trying to save the children. That's not quite the name. I haven't memorized them. And the estimates are somewhere between low side 500,000 kids a year trafficked to 10 million. I don't care whether it's 500,000 or 10 million. That's a lot of kids. You can't name a single person who got busted for taking possession of them. If anyone's listening to this podcast, and you can name someone prominent. Now, Denny Hassert got in a little bit of a scuffle, did a year or two in jail, but he was painted as just this perv, right? So he was not part of a network. He's not part of a trafficking operation. I am trying to get my brains around whether child trafficking is truly huge and if it's influencing geopolitics in ways that baffle you and I. So if we say, why did Biden leave the border open? Right? He really threw it wide open. Low level answer is he's demented, but too many people are involved, so that's not it. Higher level answer is someone paid him. Some people claim to bring in votes. I don't buy that answer because I think it's a lot easier to fake the election than to bring in illegals to vote. And until recently, I thought they couldn't vote until they became citizens, and that's just too far-sighted. But now I realize they're just handing out ballots to anyone who crosses the border. And even a potentially highest level answer is that he's completely compromised. Now, some people say, oh, we're bringing in immigrants because of our demographic decrease. I don't think you solve your demographic problem by bringing in guys who are rapists and murderers. I just don't buy that model. So if all of a sudden there was this huge push to import guys from China and India and stuff who happen to go to Silicon Valley, I would get it. We do not need to do a repeat of Australia from 300 years ago where they turned it into a penal colony. And then they populated Australia, which created Crocodile Dundee and various guys like that. You know, we need skilled labor. We don't need any more gardeners. And by the way, I'm fine with the Mexicans coming over and doing their thing. We had a truce for many decades. It was the unspoken rule that these guys can come over and they do jobs that we want them to do and they send money home. Didn't seem horrible, right? This is a different story. We are bringing serious criminals and then not treating them as criminals when they act like criminals. So someone, I believe, is attempting to destroy us. I have to conclude that. Who? That's the question. I think someone like Biden is totally compromised. So, you know, and by the way, so you start out, you're a politician. One of the rules I think is true is that you don't corrupt people in power. You corrupt them before you give them power. So it's not like Tulsi Gabbard might get nowhere near anything important because maybe she's not corrupted. Maybe she is, for all I know, but I don't think so. I doubt she's a pedophile. How's that? but you corrupt them and then you give them power. And you can start out by, when Clinton gets his back rub from that chick and the Lolita Express, whatever, you watch that and you say, yeah, she looks like she could be underage. And he's obviously a sleazeball, right? That's clear. But it doesn't blow your circuit. I'm connected with Juanita Broderick on Twitter and stuff, and I think he raped her. So, on that scale, that chick is a nothing burger, right? And she's giving him a back rub, and so, but once you get that on a guy, then the next thing you know, you're giving him a 14-year-old. And now you got him. And now you can say to the guy, look, here's the deal. We'll release the 14-year-old, or you're going to do a number on this 5-year-old. We're going to film it. And then we'll give you position of great power. But if you don't join Skull and Bones 4.0 and choke the chicken in some secret ceremony and we get you, you're not ever going to be given a position of prominence. And I think Hollywood's filled with disasters. I think Disney, the corporation, is filled with disasters. The art import-export world is filled with trafficking. I think Pizzagate's real. And I think it's horrible. But this is why I want to talk to Nick Bryant, because he's been involved with this enough, and I'm not sure he'll even want to go there in a podcast. But the fact that he reached out to do a podcast, okay, now I get to talk with Nick Bryant. I also have a bunch of people on Twitter I've connected up with who are supposedly victims of this. Now, what's a victim? Well, a victim's a person who somehow broke away. And you're not in a cage somewhere. They don't cage you up. They brainwash you. There are kids who are being trafficked who go to school, and on the weekends they get farmed out. Because you can brainwash, if you can brainwash a Marine, you can brainwash a 5-year-old. It's child's play, as they say. And so you read about this shit, and the networks are just batshit crazy, evil shit being done. And you ever see the video of the kid shimmying out of Buckingham Palace, buck naked with his sheets? He's trying to escape out the window by tying sheets together. Then he falls to his death, and they kind of had to cover that one up, There's a guy who reached out to me from Europe, from Belgium, and he says there's a huge network here in Belgium. And I'd read about it, and he's been tracking it. And supposedly one of the most prominent guys is actually still in office. They can't even get him out of office. And so then the $1 million question is, if you're moving between 500,000 and 10 million kids a year, where are you getting them from? Where are they going? Now, the horror story is, did I tell you I was in a podcast with a DOD intel? I've talked to a number of intel guys. You never know if they're lying to you, right? That's the problem. This guy seemed really straightforward. What I can tell you is he was profoundly connected. I could fact check that. And he was with Rumsfeld. He was with big guys. And he was very outspoken and seemed to have no filter. When I got to the end of the Zoom call, and I said, his name's Tony, and I said, Tony, I'm interested in the role of child trafficking and its influence on geopolitics, because there's a gravitational force out there that is causing politicians to do things that don't make sense to any of us. This would be an explanation, right? That there's something so profound happening. And he starts talking about Epstein. I go, yeah, we know about Epstein. And if you think about it, you realize he probably had 1,000 people compromised minimum. And so he really did have huge effects, and his ties to Hollywood and inside the Beltway and stuff for 40 some odd years. And they weren't just people on the Lolita Express. He had condos. He trafficked kids, by the way, kids, not just young, not just underaged kids. And so I said, I'm not interested in Epstein, although I would love to get some answers, but I don't think we're gonna. I said, I'm interested in the darker stuff, the next layer down in the onion. I said, let me ask you a simple question. Does the Clinton Foundation traffic children? And he said, absolutely. Now, I knew the answer to that. That's out there. The written record on that's pretty goddamn good, actually. Laura Silsby, look up Laura Silsby, anyone who's listening. Laura Silsby, twice caught trafficking, twice in a Haitian jail, twice pulled out of the Haitian jail by Clinton pressure. Trafficking children. When she got caught with 33, the real dark guys love to talk about 33 because it's that Freemason number, right?
Yep.
And now, what does she do? What's her job? She is now married, has a new name. That's convenient. Understandable. She works for Amber Alert. Now, if you want to find pedophiles, big league traffickers, I believe the place you start looking is in these major organizations that are supposed to be fighting traffickers. I think that's where they are controlling the flow from there. And I think a lot of the trafficking is actually for body parts, not for sex. And so I listened to an interview of a guy from Europe. Don't know if he's real. His face was, in the shadows. His voice was muffled over. But for 2 hours, he answered questions. And boy, he sounded like he was trying to give us answers. Where you go, oh, I didn't realize that. And someone says, how about picking up kids off the street in the US? He said, no, hardly any of that. He said, you don't need the hassle. That triggers so many goddamn events. He says, we can go to some godforsaken place and round up as many kids as we want.
Right.
We don't have to pick them out of Sheboygan. By the way, if you do get them out of the US, I think you're probably coming out of foster homes and shit like that. Maybe Lahaina. I have a theory on Lahaina. So that's really interesting. So now, what's one of the biggest trafficking hubs in the world? Ukraine. Why is Ukraine so important? Well, first of all, it's really, to a major extent, third world. It's got first world flavors. It's the combo first world, third world makes it a perfect place to put, for example, bioweapons labs. You need the third world so you can put people in them and test shit. You need the first world so that you can actually run the lab without the lights going out, right? But it's a child trafficking hub. And the question is, why would that be? And first of all, the peasants don't have a lot of power. So let's say the kids are disappearing. Who are they going to bitch to? Zelensky, right? The other thing is, if you were selling kids on the open market, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Ukrainian kids, my suspicion is would bring the best price. What a perfect place to harvest. And they call it when there's a catastrophe, like a hurricane or earthquake, they call it harvest season. They go, oh, we got to save the children. Sort of like World War II London, get them out of the tube, get them out of London so they don't get killed. Except they don't ever make it back. And you're a Haitian and you're going, where's my kid? Where'd they go? They're gone. So that's where the southern border might be a lot of that. Certainly our enemies are getting through the border. I've zero doubt. They can't be stupid enough to miss that opportunity. So if I were some Arab country, Al Qaeda, whatever, that's not a country I know, and I wanted to set up sleeper cells in the US, you could get students to get student visas and then be a sleeper cell, but you could also just send guys over who are completely untracked.
Right.
Now, when's it get riskiest? Here's my guess. And this is just Dave, organic chemist in Ithaca, New York, right? So no one should take this as fact-based. If you were planting people around this country getting ready for the apocalypse, right? Getting ready to do some damage, you would probably wait until the borders got closed. Because you're getting people across every day.
Right.
So it's the point where we shut down the flow. And there's a guy named J.J. Carroll who wrote a book. He's a J.J. Carroll wrote a book, and I've had a few exchanges with him about being a border guard. And he said, we used to catch the bad guys coming across, send them home. He said, they're coming across by the thousands now. JJ is completely convinced that massively dangerous people are coming over in unimaginable numbers. And we don't think they're just massively dangerous because they're thugs. They're massively dangerous because they're being sent here for a reason.
Well, that makes me think, I mean, what's your impression of the next 3 months pre-election?
I
Does it
don't
get
know.
crazier?
I don't know. Could it get crazier than what we've seen over the last
It's
2
got
weeks?
to, I think. It has to.
Well, I used to
That's sort
talk
of my
about how
impression.
November 5th, we probably talked about how it'd be tough to get through November 5th without it getting crazy. But to see two presidential candidates come this close to being knocked out of the game in 2 weeks, and then have it fail.
So I feel like we're just there. We're in suspense. I mean, I feel like that's episode 2. Like, what is episode 3 going to bring?
This is,
By-
you know, the Three Body Problem, the TV show?
No.
It's a series. It's incomplete. Apparently, it's a trilogy that you could read, but they did one series. It's where the physics starts working, and they realize something very odd is happening in the universe, and so it feels like the Three Body Problem to me. It feels like I'm watching a sci-fi movie, and I just don't know that assassination attempt. It didn't just look like an operation gone bad. It has so many batshit crazy
All the world's a
components.
stage. You
But
talk
it's
about
like
Tulsi
It's like a
Gabbard.
comedy.
People, yeah, I'm looking at her Wikipedia. You know, she's been in the military 2003 to present, according to Wikipedia. You know what unit she's in? She's in
I thought
United
she's in a
States.
medical unit. I thought she was in a medical unit.
Okay,
No?
let's read the exact title. United States Army Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Command.
Holy Jesus Christ.
And when I bring this up, a lot of people get mad. I get a lot of write-ins but I mean,
These are people who don't
PSYOP
have the
division.
emotional stamina.
But she's
to
in the
have their
PSYOP
worldview
division.
It sounds like it by that name.
Yeah, and the United States military is allowing her to run in politics.
Right.
And so when I watch her speak, I find it extremely compelling because she's in the PSYOPs division. There's a message that's being delivered, in my opinion. And when I, think about this, like, what would you make if Putin had an assassination attempt that nicked his ear? The guy who doesn't waffle. Have you seen his security team? I mean, they look legit.
I bet they are legit.
Like,
yeah.
I don't think they're missing a building 125 yards from Putin. And I don't think our government is missing that building either.
I don't need, that's the thing that just doesn't. The only thing I can, if let's say it turns out we found out that's exactly what happened. What you'd have to say is, first of all, to build that model, you have to say, first of all, they sent Trump all the dregs. They're sending him not enough. And they're going to so many events so frequently, so chaotically, and Trump is so unpredictable that they kind of really dropped their guard. They said, fuck it. We just got to hang around Trump and look in the crowd and whatever. You can imagine maybe they were just sort of institutionally exhausted.
All right. Well, okay. So, a lot of what we talked about here around, we haven't talked about MK Ultra.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But I mean, I want to know.
By the way, that kid would be a candidate for it, right?
100%. That's
100%.
why
100%.
we haven't talked about it, but we've danced around it in so many different ways. So, and I love asking you to deconstruct the news, because there's not many people I would go to do this. So last time we spoke around the kids and MK Ultra and different things, Britney Spears was kind of like, you didn't want to talk about it, but it seemed like it was something you were looking at.
Oh, I've read a fuck ton on Britney Spears.
Yeah. And so, but since then, we got the P. Diddy thing.
And where'd it go?
Well, it disappeared. But,
right.
But these are really, it was monumental in a way. Only more monumental things like an assassination attempt
Well,
on
the
one
problem is the
president.
shit I've been reading makes the P. Diddy thing not look monumental. That's the problem. P. Diddy looks generic.
Right, but for that to look generic, you're reading it's a much bigger
Bad shit,
picture.
crazy stuff.
And
Bad
it's
shit,
not,
crazy stuff.
and I think the public kind of like absorbed the P. Diddy the stuff thing as if it wasn't a big deal, which is strange.
Well, but did it make it past Twitter?
I don't know. I'm in a
Did it
bubble.
make it to CNN? Did it make it to Fox?
I thought it did.
It kind of did, I think. But it also sort of like Jeffrey Epstein committing suicide, right?
Yeah.
Now that one lingers because we know he didn't commit suicide. That one, it's clear someone whacked him, right? You would comfortably bet every Bitcoin you own,
Right,
that Jeffrey did not commit suicide. Wasn't even possible. You look at how the cells are constructed, what the sheets are made of. He couldn't have strangled himself.
right. But I feel like there's a lot of these things that are at that level that I have that conviction that maybe the public doesn't, but
right. And then you get into this. You do worry. So I worry that I'm too deep, right? That somehow not too deep, too factually deep, but I've gotten to the point where I trust nothing.
And maybe we've lost perspective.
That's right. So now I might have talked about this last time, maybe I didn't, but I'll hit it again. When you read about pedophilia networks, you immediately hit satanic cults. The Venn diagram overlap of those two is extraordinary, actually.
Right.
You find it everywhere.
Which
you
leads
cannot
to the
read
transgender thing, and
well, and I try to keep those separate,
but they're not.
Well, the transgender thing I think is political, but I'm not positive how much it connects up with the trafficking. So transgender to me looks like a sort of rising socialist movement, kind of a cultural revolution.
Right.
So if you had asked me, and there's this weird things of these satanic cults within families that go back generations, if you don't think of it as something completely weird, you think of it as just a twisted religion, their belief is that God is evil. Satan is coming to save everybody. And to an atheist, they'd say, well, that's just no more crazy than God being believable, except for the fact you're awfully dark. You can lay off the decaf, lay off the coffee a little bit. But if you had asked me who's the most famous Satanist in the world, I would have answered without hesitation, Marina Abramovic.
I would have said Anton LaVey.
I don't think he's close to Marina Abramovic. So Marina has been written up in the Atlantic Monthly and stuff for being a Satanist. And she does this spirit cooking where they pretend to eat cadavers, and she talks about mixing semen in her blood, and she did shit with Lady Gaga, and she's everywhere. She's in pictures with Hillary. She's
Jay-Z,
everywhere.
Madonna.
That's exactly right.
Diplomat
she's everywhere.
with Ukraine. I mean, she's everywhere now.
Well, so that's the funny part. So I'm thinking I'm too deep, and then Zelensky appoints her. Not a diplomat, not just a diplomat.
An ambassador.
She's in charge of overseeing their schools.
It's too deep.
And this is ABC News level news, right? This is not some blogger.
Right.
And I'm going, oh my God, you can't get weirder. You just can't get weirder. And so, so then the question, but when I look at a family walking down the street, and I look at mom and dad and the kids, that there's parents who treat their kids in unimaginably bad ways. But I still, when I look at your generic family, I still have trouble fathoming that those two people who brought those kids in the world could do to their kids what I am reading about. Now, I know it happens, but I would have said, look, they're one-offs. And the number suggests they're not one-offs. They're huge. And so with this Nick Bryant podcast, I don't know why he invited me. Someone must have whispered in his ear, you ought to talk to this guy from Cornell. Someone must have whispered in his ear, because I have no reason to believe he's been following my podcast or anything. And he said, what do you want to talk about? And I go, oh, okay. But I want to talk to him because I want to talk to a guy who has been up to his ass in this shit for about 20 years. I gave a talk to my Zoom group on this stuff, and it wasn't organized. I was just kind of going through my notes and chattering about it. They were shockingly receptive. These are a bunch of doctors from all over the world, virologists, lawyers. They're shockingly receptive. And some guy says, so-and-so ex-CIA is coming in a few minutes. I can't remember his name. I've, of course, written it all down. I write everything down. But the guy supposedly has been somehow studying involved in this CIA trafficking children. And I said, wait a minute, he's coming? He said, yeah, I gave him a call. I've known him for 30 years, actually. And so the guy shows up. Now, he didn't hear me talk for 2 hours, but they asked him to give us sort of a thumbnail sketch of the world that he's been paying attention to. And for 15 minutes, he described exactly what I've been describing. It was unbelievable. Like I got 100 on the quiz. And then they started asking questions. It was this funny dynamic because they would ask a question, they'd have me answer first, and then they'd have him chime in. And I'd give the answer to the question. And a number of times he said, yeah, that's pretty much what Dave said. And he said, the problem is you'll never shut it down because somewhere like 18 to 20% of the CIA is involved in trafficking. I'm going, what? But have you ever heard about Operation Gladio? Operation Gladio has its roots back to World War II. You know, when we used the Sicilian mob to soften up Sicily for the invasions and stuff like that. Some guys like Lucky Luciano got let out of prison to help and things like that. The CIA was formed from mobsters.
Right. Meyer Lansky and
That's right. The CIA didn't start with a bunch of FBI types, although I'm not even sure what that means anymore. But let's, stereotypical FBI types and turning them into good spies. They started with a bunch of mobsters, and they were already badasses of a higher order. Operation Gladio talks about the global drug trade, I think excluding the fentanyl trade, which is China, as a triumvirate where the Vatican is the bankers, the mob gets the drugs to the street, and the intelligence agencies solve the geopolitical problems.
I never heard about the Vatican part of it.
Well, I hadn't either, except for we know the Vatican's filled with pervs. By the way, you heard of Carlo Vigano?
The current? No, I probably
He's
not.
like ranked third in the Vatican. I mean, he's really way up there. He has been accusing world leaders of being pedophiles. He has been accusing them of being. Now they're trying to find some way to get him to shut up. So he was the guy who apparently spilled the beans on the Vatican covering up the pedophiles in the church. Now that I've never found interesting because although it's bad, if your job description requires the person sign off on a lifetime of abstinence, you're likely to get some pretty odd shit after a while, right? And so the fact they covered up, I go, well, they're having trouble getting priests. It's bad, and if your kid's been molested by a priest, I get it. But there's no darker content in there based on just that part of the story. But so I read this book called Operation Gladio. It talks about this trade. Now, you think about the church, and I've written in defense of the church, even though I'm an atheist, because I think that it organizes society in a way that we all benefit from, even if we're not religious ourselves. And they kept the nobles in check in the olden days. they would have trampled the peasants, and they'd say, no, you're going to go to hell, and this is what hell looks like. Behave yourselves, right? So I think the church, I'd underestimated the importance of the church, and I'd heard too many stories about them doing bad shit to good people, and I think there's propaganda there. But I was talking to a guy who's an anti-vaxxer. He's the guy who actually figured out that remdesivir was killing people, and that's where a lot of the fatalities were coming from, was remdesivir. He was in my Dr. Zoom group, and we were talking for a couple of hours, and we went down a lot of rabbit holes. And he said, I think China is not going against the United States or Europe. They're going against the church. Now, that kind of like, what? But then I thought about it, and I realized that for 2,000 years, the church has been compounding wealth. When you die, you leave all your money to God. If you look downtown Ithaca, I can identify a number of properties that are probably owned by the Catholic Church. Every town, every city, real estate everywhere. So the church as a religious entity and the church as a financial entity should probably, and the church as a political entity, you should probably keep those ideas separate. And it hit me that, the church could own 40% of the world's assets. I don't know. I just threw a number out. That happens to be the same number they say the Rothschilds own. So the rest of us own 20, right? I don't know. So I read Gladio hoping they would actually get near trafficking. And it didn't. The book didn't. But they did do the drugs. And the CIA basically funds itself with these black ops things. So they first start out selling a few drugs into the hood, and then they expanded and expanded. And so the CIA has a line item budget in the government, but has also a bunch of shit it just flat out makes money on. And I think they've stolen just a ton of money from the federal government, just flat out. Estimates like Catherine Austin Fitts says, $15 trillion are missing. There's a famous video of Rumsfeld saying that we're missing
10th.
2 point. Well,
September 10th,
I've seen,
right?
September 10th, 2001. He
Right.
claimed that they were missing 2.4 trillion.
Right.
What a great way to bury a story.
I mean, I think they're missing hundreds of trillions.
Well, now, but back in 2001, maybe not. Who knows? But the CIA very well could be trafficking the children, critical part of it.
To be.
I didn't even know if they work for us.
They don't.
Right.
I mean, just because I'm not trying to get into allegiance to America or not. I think they're allegiant to the money mechanisms that are embedded within their institution.
Well, so for example, the Federal Reserve does not work for us.
No, it doesn't. Right.
No, it works for the international banks.
Right.
And you and I both know that if at some point the best play for the national banks is to throw the dollar under the bus, it's going under the bus.
Right.
And so Powell has the trappings of a U.S.-based thing, and U.S. domiciled banks look like U.S.-based companies, but Citigroup, J.P. Morgan, they have branches in every country of the world. How would you ever consider them U.S.-based? Right? And so the question is, there seems to be a globalist move, right? The globalist move, World Economic Forum, which I think is a lot of horseshit. I think that's the stuff to keep us confused. That's the limited hangout crap. They're not going to tell us anything important. So when Klaus Schwab says you're going to eat bugs, he's just bullshitting us.
Right.
I hope.
Well, you got kids, Dave.
I know.
I mean,
I am fortunate. I unfortunately have a little bit of a sociopathic view that every generation has its cross to bear. And I have to worry about what we're doing right now. And it will impact my kids, but they're going to have their own problems to deal with too. And I can't lose sleep over the world they'll be in that I won't be in. So I can only affect the world I'm in right now. And so I tend not to look forward to the guys who don't have kids because they don't bring kids into this world. I go,
Where do you, I mean, I would imagine your kids are my age or a little bit younger than me.
34 and 42, I think.
Where do you think your kids will be when they're your age? Like,
I'm
what do
hoping
you
they'll
think the
be
battle will be
okay,
then?
but well, it depends
Or,
on the fate of the United States, right?
okay, do you think that comes down to this 2024 election in any way? Do you think it
No,
matters?
no.
I don't think, yeah.
I think it matters in the short term. Put it this way. I think with Trump in office, I will be less repulsed by what the federal government does than with Biden in office.
Okay. Do you think that the United States has another 100 years in it, kind of thing, or do you think we're at
Um,
the end of, people talk about the fourth turning. Are we at the end of a 320-year turning where, it's like French Revolution, American Revolution? Like, is there the Chinese Revolution and the next century is China's not ours? Are we at the end of an empire? Are your
we
kids going to
would
be
be
your age and be
lucky.
peasants? Are we all
Well,
going to be peasants at your age?
well, we could be British, right? The British Empire kind of faded into, so the Brits are kind of,
Doing okay, I guess you're saying.
they're
And
doing okay, but they're also kind of mediocre in their own way. Although I heard that Oxford's the #1 university in the country. I also know someone they just hired who's a psychopath who never should have been hired. So they're about to go to below #1 just on this one hire.
do you think higher education still matters?
I think it will matter less.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to train people to build robots and shit,
Do you,
right? I mean,
do you-
there really is. Yeah, there's people who have to
sure.
study math and
Right.
biochemistry and physics. And there's a great meme I saw the other day where it's that one of those ones where the guy's talking to his daughter, and it's the same frame. It's just two different captions, and he says, "I'm so glad you're majoring in philosophy." And he said the next frame says, "Because they're building a big philosophy plant downtown starting next year." Right. And so I think people, the pinnacle of academia was when guys like Henry Blodgett could become stinking rich and influential, making calls on Amazon and pets.com and companies like this with an English degree from Princeton. And I think up until around the year 2000, there was this get the sheepskin, it'll pay for itself. And then schools became very expensive. And now you have to ask, what kind of career will I be able to get that will pay off this loan? And if you're dropping $250,000, by the way, if you've got young kids out there, if anyone's sitting out there with young kids, you really ought to dig into how to save for college, because the richer you look, the less aid you're going to get. So when your kids enter college, you want to look like a homeless guy. So what would that do? One of the things you could do, and this is unofficial, but it might work. Let's say my kid wanted to save $10,000 a year for his kids for college. When financial aid offices look at his situation, they look at how much he earns. They say, we get a percentage of that. They look at how many kids are in college. So there's all these formulas. But some of the formulas, like we look at how much he earns and how much he has in the bank, and we can assume we get to take a percentage of that. So the colleges sort of put their grubby paws on that percentage. They say, okay, we can take 25% of that and 24% of that. And then they look at savings accounts that the kids have. They go 100%. 100%. So the last thing I think you want to do is set up a college savings account.
Right.
Because they will say every penny of that fucking account is ours. Right. Now, who doesn't get looked at? Grandparents. 401ks. So I had a colleague who got a big raise and he was talking about saving for college. I said, no, max out your 401k shit. I put something like 28% of my gross income into sheltered accounts. And he said, well, what about college? I said, well, when the kids get to college age, stop donating all that goddamn money into the account and pay for it with your cash flow if you have to. But here's the deal. If instead of paying $10,000 into some savings account, write a check to your parents, having faith that when your kid goes through college and needs to have that student loan covered, grandma and grandpa will then pay the bill. That money's
not
absurd.
Seen. Like, Dave. I'm gonna humble brag here. I'm raising a quant.
Right.
My son's 11. He knows the first 150 digits of pi memorized. He could solve a Rubik's Cube in like 20 seconds.
Does he score high on standardized tests and things
everything.
Like that? Okay.
Yeah. He's going to go to like the number 13 high school in the country. He's going to for middle school, but I could honestly have him doing about 80% of what I do in my corporate job now with a little bit of direction. Like he does not need to take on any debt. I'm not saying we won't send him to college. I don't know how it's going to go.
I had
but there's no productive
2-hour conversations with Eric Weinstein about his kid in college. All the Weinsteins had trouble with college educations. They're famous, but academia did damage to both of them. And I had to talk Eric off the ledge because he didn't want to send his kid to college. What I would do is work with him and figure out what the kid would really like to do. And then do whatever you got to do to get prepared to do that. And that probably involves going to college.
Coding camp. But, I'm more concerned about the world they're going to grow up in.
Yeah, right. But you can't control it.
No, I can't. I'm hoping we get through this fourth turning completely
without dying.
20, without dying, I get them through, and they have this beautiful renaissance to grow, spend most of their time in.
Well, but the fourth turning may not leave us in great shape. The fourth turning, right? The fourth turning could be a global one, and it could be we could end up. It's hard to picture the U.S. being the rock stars 20 years from now, the rock stars that we thought we were going to be. I think the evidence, we've got too much debt.
Yeah.
And we've got no political will. And so we're going to have, how long is it going to take us to get to 50 trillion, do you think?
GDP?
Debt.
Oh, not too long. Maybe another 16 months.
Year and a half. Yeah. Year and a half. Yeah.
But we could right this ship. I mean, someone's going to come out of this a rock star. Someone's going to come out of this with hard money and an incredible economy. Do you think? I'll ask you. I mean, have your thoughts on Bitcoin changed at all in the last 6-7 months? Hard money, gold.
They get more refined. They get more refined, I think. Bitcoin's going to be fascinating for me.
I mean, it's shown. I think where it is kind of been very interesting, probably from your perspective. I mean,
but I don't know if it's good news or bad news, though. I don't know.
I know, and I know you're still waiting for the major fight to come and huge battle, and I know you're sitting that out. But just in terms of where it probably looks like Rocky against Ivan Drago in round 9 now, not round 3, where you're like.
There's a couple things. One thing is a short-term phenomenon that I'm watching that will be fascinating to me, and that is. As I've said to you, revolutions are fueled by youth, and Bitcoin therefore has all the trappings of a revolution because it certainly is not a boomer movement, and they're going to look crazy, right? And the old guys are not going to understand them, and there's a lot of ways that they can do pain to your community. I believe that the maximalists, who are not only maximalists in terms of saying I should have everything in Bitcoin, but they're also maximalists in terms of optimism. So I can imagine a person saying, look, Bitcoin's really sketchy, but I still think I should have all my assets. And I have no trouble with that idea. It's the guy who fist pumps and says they can't touch us. I go, oh, you're not paying attention to history. They can always touch you. They can always get you. The shorter term thing that I'll be watching carefully is that the next crisis is going to be some sort of credit crisis, right? The banks are starting to fold over again. That despite some numbers coming out of the federal government that say everything's fine, everything that I'm watching is rolling over. I think that this bubble's bigger than the last one, but I don't have as good a view of it. So I think it's better hidden. So the last one, it was a real estate bubble, and it was just this psychopathic nitwittery of craziness in the real estate market. This one, I believe the dangers are much deeper. They're much more systemic. And they're hard to understand, like private debt. So the private debt market is said to be huge and hard to measure, which is almost a paradox. But there's a lot of places where the system can crack again. And if we're boxed in by inflation and too much federal debt, then the crowd who says we're just going to inflate it away, I think, are missing the complexity of the inflation story. Because at some point you say, oh, if we're just going to print it away, high inflation destroys societies. It's not a monetary thing. It's a social thing. You destroy countries with high inflation. You end up in world wars. Things just go very bad. And so, and then if you say, so crudely speaking, there's about 1.5 million unfunded liabilities having to do with just Social Security and Medicare. $1 trillion, 1.5 million per capita, or per taxpayer capita. I'm not sure which, but it's a lot of money. I got in an argument with Einhorn, and he didn't believe it. And then I sent him a document that had signed by Janet Yellen that had the 175 trillion value in it. And so some people say, well, we'll just inflate that away. And I go, okay, so what they're going to do is destroy your earning power by $1.5 million. Explain to me why that somehow is better. They're still going to just destroy everything you've saved to get that $1.5 million back, if that's what we need to get back. You say, well, why do we have to get it back? I said, it just collapses, right? It's a superstructure that just falls over on its own because of its own weight, becomes too shock sensitive, things like that. So there will be another crisis. I think it'll come out of left field, because they all do, because we think we've plugged the dam and it's going to be some other leak. It's going to be, long-term capital management was sent sailing because of a bond default in Russia. Who would have predicted that, right? Corporate debt has soared. Corporate debt's going to fail us. They talk about bail-ins. They never do bail-ins. It's going to be awful. A credit crisis, however, what the Bitcoin community, both emotionally and in reality, has not been through is a credit crisis. The last time we were in trouble was what? 08, 09. Bitcoin was a twinkle in your eyes. Bitcoin was so, what was it in 08, 09? What's the price of Bitcoin? It's probably 5 cents. So Bitcoin has never been tested in a crisis. And you can say, are they going to soar in a crisis? Not if it's a cash crisis. And all the douchebags who bought big fucking houses because they have Bitcoin, but their Bitcoin now is dropping like a stone, and they realize they can't afford the house if they don't liquidate these Bitcoins, and they got to get out now. And so I do not believe in any way, shape, or form Bitcoin is impervious to the ebbs and flows of credit flows. It protects you against some things. I think the best case for me was made by Lynn Alden, where she talked about, I think the best case is the truly apocalyptic case where it says you can go to another part of the world and you still have it. And I would have trouble moving gold. There are ways to do it. So, for example, Simon Mikhailovic has a gold holding company where you can deposit or take it out of any one of 7 cities in the world. And so if you have to skedaddle off to Switzerland, you can then grab your gold there. Now, could that break? I mean, I know Simon personally. Simon could be a sociopath. I don't know. Simon, no offense. I don't think you're a sociopath, but you don't know. Bernie Madoff was trusted. JP Morgan knew he was running a Ponzi scheme and they just charged him high fees.
Mm-hmm.
Right, what a ridiculous situation. And JP Morgan, no one went to jail for that.
Mm-hmm.
So Bitcoin's
I think there was so many bigger
crisis.
powers behind Bernie than
right.
Yeah.
Right. And John Corzine, right? These are guys who could have been put in prison for a very long time. That was the big mistake they made. After the savings and loan crisis, guys went to jail, and probably nowhere near enough.
Right.
But enough where the average joker can say, okay, we got the bad guys. Right? Headline convictions. In 0809, we got nothing. And so people were mad. So that was the beginning of the fourth turning, in my opinion, when they failed to do anything. And the prosecutors actually tried, and then some court would spend 3 hours and overturn the whole conviction after they built a case for months and months and months. So I think Bitcoin is going to be put under pressure, and it'll be interesting to watch how it responds. Interesting to watch how the authorities respond. Interesting to see if they see it as a way to raid assets. I do not believe it is off radar.
Right.
You know a lot more than I do, but I do believe that if they want to find it, they will find it. And I still have this sort of working model in my skull that maybe they crowdsource the development of digital currency, and they say, well, let's release some digital currencies. Let's let the smartest guys on the planet not only figure out how to do it, but acclimate everybody to it. And it wasn't the original paper on digital currencies written by a couple of NSA guys? Isn't that true?
I think that might be true. Yeah. And you can make a really good non-zero percentage case that Bitcoin was brought up by the NSA.
Right. So that should spook you. That should spook you.
I don't think it would change the protocol, but it could change.
Well, but it tells you they might have had some idea. There might have been a reason for it.
Or maybe they're white hats in the government, but I get what you're saying.
So I take Bitcoin very, very seriously. How it responds to the next crisis may be the tipping point for me. I'm trying to buy nothing between now and the next crisis. And I'm 30% gold now, probably. And so my hedges are big enough. And I got a lot of, 2-year treasuries and crap like that, and some exposure to the market, but very little.
Well, I can imagine you're playing a lot of defense.
I'm playing a lot of defense, and people wonder why I tweet about,
right.
Boston Terriers and shit, because I've basically placed my bets. I'm waiting for the bell to ring on the Kentucky Derby.
Let's say though, the Kentucky Derby you're referring to as the macro environment, but let's say your bell is rung. And I asked this not to kind of talk about morbidity, but like my dad just recently passed, and I didn't get to ask him certain questions, and
right,
he didn't maybe have I don't want to say any words of wisdom for me, but it wasn't like there was one thing he said.
Oh no, it's the sort of the worldview that he provided.
Yeah,
my dad was huge on that.
But if it's what would you say to your kids? If your bell would be rung, you're gone. You don't see how it's going to turn out. You only know what you know now. What advice would you give to the next generations or your own kids? Not you being generous.
They're kind of already on a course that's been charted. So there's not. So one of my sons is a professional violinist. So since we last talked, again, I have trouble with these Italian names, but he went to Europe on a 6-week shopping trip for a violin. He's a beast. I mean, the kid, when he gets into something, it's just don't reach into the cage because he's doing something. And So he's like your son in that sense. And he went from shop to shop to shop all over Europe. Somehow managed to do it on $2,700 of housing. And he went to shops and auctions and museums all over Europe. Part of it was to find out, is there a reason to go to Europe to buy a good violin, or would you do just as well going to New York and Chicago, right? And on one of his last things, he went to a Terezio auction, which is the biggest auction house in the world for violins. And that's where, if you're going to sell a Strat or something, it's going to be Terezio. And he found a 1725, I think it's Carlo Antonio Testori violin. And my son's got a brilliant ear. So it turns out violin dealers, most of them are what are called luthiers, or the guys who make them and fix them. It was almost considered not even sane for a violinist to sell violins, which strikes me as insane. But he ran into a guy in New York. He said, yeah, when I started, I was almost the only guy who actually knew how to play violin. So my son has a great ear. And the reason he has a great ear is because when his mom was pregnant and she had terrible back problems, she was laid up flat and she put headphones onto her stomach and played classical music. I've read a lot about neuroplasticity and neuropsychology, and that would do it. Kids come out of the womb knowing dialect, knowing voices. That if a kid's raised, in the womb of an Indian mother, that kid will come out rolling their R's. And by the time he was 3 years old, he would listen to classical music and he could hear the shit going on in the back. His friends are singing B-I-N-G-O. And he's going, I like this part right here. And you'd hear the second violin's going to go right there. And I'm going, holy fuck. So one day I took him to buy a violin in high school. And you actually set a price range. You say, look, I got about this much. And the guy lays out the violin. So it was like about a $12,000 price range. And so we go to the biggest dealer in the country in Boston. And the guy lays out 5 violins. And then I go and kill some time. And he plays them for about 2 hours. And then the owner, who also happens to know violins really well, and I walk back in and he says, okay. And he describes each violin. He said, this is the one I have to play some more right here, this one. And so the owner and I walked out and he said, your son could do this for a living. This kid was in high school. So he played this one violin. He said, this is the one. This is it. And he learned a ton, spending 6 weeks in Europe, immersing like crazy. And he came back with it was $100,000 violin. Bank of Dad. That's me. So technically I own a violin. So he spent some of his inheritance, but he is a much better violinist because of it. And so that's where you say, okay, my wife said, you really 100,000? I said, well, it's probably not going to go down in value, at least seriously, although there could be a bubble. It's getting restored right now. He actually got to play it the other day, and he said it sounds better than when I played it. And so he's on a track already. He tried the cubicle farm. He has a business degree. He tried the consulting firm. It just didn't play. And he finally said, fuck it, I'm going to be a violinist. And no conservatory, no anything. And he had a guy who's a concert master of one of the big orchestras in Boston, said, when I first heard you were going to try to be a professional violinist, I thought you were nuts. He said, you've done it. He's Seabiscuit. Everything he's ever done, he started way, way back in the pack. When he's a gymnast, he started with a shitty coach. And they'd give like 14 ribbons and he wouldn't get one, right? And he ended up winning a gold medal in the 8th state regional gymnastics championship. He started riding horses. He was riding dog food. He ended up 5th in the nation as an equestrian. So he's Seabiscuit. The kid plays his best game when his expectations have been tapped down and it's nothing but go. So he took up lacrosse sophomore year. So I'm playing with him, and I'm talking to the captain of the Cornell team, which is a top 5 ranked team. They actually should have won that year, the title. And I'm talking to him, and we're watching. My son's taking shots into the cage, and the captain says, "How long's your son played?" I said, 3 months. He goes, "What?" I said, "Yeah, 3 months." He just couldn't believe it. I knew how to coach him. I had played lacrosse. And in fact, he was playing in a lacrosse camp, and I watched one of his coaches. He played on a travel team, having played no lacrosse. I mean, it really was out of left field. And one of the coaches who played D1 lacrosse, he's at this camp, and all the coaches are it's the last day I'm going to pick him up. And I see the coach, who I know well, lean over. And so my son's playing catch for the guy from Syracuse, who's clearly could knock Trump's ear off with a shot. And I watched Thomas's coach lean over and say something to the guys. And I watched all the coaches sort of sit up and watch. The guy from Syracuse was chucking the ball all over the place, and Thomas was just grabbing it out of the air like crazy. And afterwards I said to him, I said, did you tell them he had been playing lacrosse for 6 months total? And he said, "Yeah, I did." I said, "Yeah, I saw their body language." And so in any event, so he's charted his course. My other son is the director of event management at the Council on Foreign Relations. He's not making a ton of money, but that's the only line in his resume that matters. You run those events. His first day on the job, he had to fucking wrestle Madeleine Albright to the ground because she's such a shit fit. He has this way about him. I thought he was such a loser as a kid. He was so bad in school. He was just, and somehow his temperament made him perfect for this job. And so he just super dad. So I just don't have any more advice for these guys beyond just the occasional, Trump's good, Biden's bad kind of shit. My younger son is more right-wing militant. My older son's got a little more lefty from his mom in him. I'd like to know what he actually knows about the world that he isn't telling me. He pretends like he's not listening. But for all I know, he's like CIA. Yeah. But there were moments. He said there was this one moment where they were talking about setting up a new like when the tsunami hit, I think. One of the tsunamis hit. He said what was the most amazing thing was within 15 minutes, the council had put everything into gear. And he said, 10 minutes later, Clinton's inside the CFR making phone calls all over the world. He said, you've just never seen sort of these guys kick it into high gear like I've seen. And one day they were talking about building an annex or something in Chicago. And Pete Peterson, who was the head. So it was started by Alan Dulles, right? David Rockefeller was in there, right? This is a serious crowd. And Pete Peterson was running it at that point. And they were talking about it. And they're talking about the 75 million to raise and this. And Peterson loses his patience. He says, I'll kick in 75 million. Let's move on. He said that really sort of sucked the oxygen out of the room. Right. And guys like Ben Steele is there and Amity Schleys, his fellows and stuff. So it's a phenomenal place to hang out. He right now telecommutes it. He lives in Dublin, New Hampshire. Telecommutes running their events. That's why commercial real estate's so fucked.
Right. Yeah. It's going to get just dematerialized. I think eaten up by Bitcoin. I think of two things as we round out here. So I hear that life goes on and the kids are going to be okay. And
I do fear that the United States has not suffered in 150 years. I really do fear that.
Yeah, I do. And so I wonder how much, but even if it suffers, life still goes on, and people
I
still
know,
feel
but
the
like in
beauty in it.
Ukraine, there's 500,000 dead Ukrainians,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And in this Scott Horton book, there's 5 million dead Middle Easterners because of our foreign policy. Someday we may be on the receiving end of the, I don't know how I'm going to get my next meal.
Yeah, I worry about, like, on one hand we have kids in Europe buying violins, and it's
Right,
beautiful. And on the other hand, we have kids in Chicago getting shot.
right.
And I you know, so I just, I don't know what words we can pass on, but I wonder, are we being doomers because life goes on? And part of it is like, it's amazing to be parents that can buy their kids the violin.
Right.
And so I want the future to be a place where Americans grow up and families can afford to buy their kids things.
Right.
And so I worry that's at stake. On the other hand, though, I worry that, like, even if that's at stake, it's just material things, and life goes on, and parents will find things to give their kids, and kids will find things to fall in love with.
Well, but material,
know.
it's not, that's material, but it's also, I'm not just, I could retire today and I'm 100% confident, unless we end up with a hyperinflation collapsing, whatever. If things go reasonably normal, I will die with money in the bank.
But what about our kids and their kids?
Well, so
And
my goal, however, is to leave a nest egg for those guys. I do
will
not
they be
want
able
to
to
just
create one?
that generation is having trouble.
Yeah.
And so I am trying to use my upper middle class advantage to pass that one generation further.
Right. And that's how much I wonder if we're living in a bubble,
Well,
and
I
we're
think we are.
passing it forward. And our kids are living in a bubble because they're receiving it, versus like, hey, we should be telling them, hey, you might not get the violin. You might have to work and do something else so that you could buy the violin for your kid. And I'm so concerned, and I wonder, are we being doomers? I just don't know.
So for example, my younger son, who's the professional violinist, I don't want to quote his annual salary, but it's extraordinarily low. So he is somehow learning how to live on he's paid less than our grad students.
Right.
And somehow he's happy.
Which is something to be celebrated.
Right.
But
the trickiest thing is if I leave money to them, the trickiest thing is how not to fuck them up with it.
Yeah, you're right.
It's really
how to give it in the right way.
And that's where my dad was really good at that. I never felt like I needed to ask him for money, but he always seemed to know.
But we're going through a different situation now, where your generation has all the money and is going on, cruises and maybe even getting medical procedures that they need or don't need, whatever, but not giving it to the kids, and the kids aren't drumming up the wealth and the savings.
Well, the other challenge here, so people talk about the big wealth transfer from the boomers down. I'm not convinced I understand how that wealth transfer occurs. Because, for example, I live in a valuable house by Ithaca standards. It costs 3 times what would totally satisfy our needs. It happens to look west over Cuba Lake, hanging off a 100-foot cliff. It is life-changing in terms of quality of life.
Right,
and
so
my
that might
wife
be a
enjoys
unique asset, but like
right.
the 100
but
others.
The gist, but the gist is that asset can't. My kids can't take that asset.
Right,
and they're going to pass that along
to divide it.
I have to sell it to someone, and if there's no one who has any money to buy it, then that asset that I said was worth 3 times what I needed.
Now the one on the cliff might get it, but all the assets that are worth 3x in the middle of town, might not.
Well, they're all right.
Probably won't.
The absurdity is, round number, they've doubled the cost of owning a house or buying a house, yet the housing prices are not yet adjusting. They have to adjust.
And,
They
and I
have
think
to
I think the
adjust.
boomers are not only going to have to sell it so that the kids can break it up and divide it, but they're going to sell it to pay their medical expenses.
Could
And it
be.
won't go to the kids. It'll go to the corporations.
And I used to think, state pension plans were going to be a real problem because they're way underfunded. But I
Right.
realized is that the bailout of state pension plans is more probable than the bailout of private pension plans.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden I'm looking at the guys who live in Illinois on some state, assuming they're going to get a state pension plan, thinking someone will probably find a way to give them their fucking pension. But they're not going to give a pension to the guy who owns a grocery store downtown.
Right.
Who's running thin. I see people retiring on quantities of money that I think aren't even close to what you need.
Yeah.
And it scares me. Like my secretary, I've had several secretaries for several different things. One of which is an editor, and the other which is a departmental thing. She retired at 62. And I'm sitting there, and I don't know what her financial situation. I know she's a chick who lives in the sticks. She's not some trust fund baby who decided to be a secretary. I'm looking at her, and I didn't say anything. I didn't want to, but I'm thinking, are you sure you accrued enough wealth as a secretary that you can retire with potentially 40 more years left? And I think there's boomers now with this inflation problem, which is huge. They are hitting a wall already very, very hard. They're finding, my son described it. He said, I just walked home from the grocery store with a bag of groceries. I carried it. And I said, well, what was in it? He said, ground turkey, a lot of vegetables. He eats well. He eats healthy. No prime rib, nothing like that. No, nothing expensive. No spices, no nothing. Just food. $157. That, I don't know how a family of four puts food on the table. And we heard 5 years ago they could barely put food on the table, and now the food, and they say inflation. Here's an interesting thing about inflation. It clicked. Rosenberg told this story, and the economists make more sense to me now, but they're making a fundamental error. So Rosenberg talks about different kinds of inflation. And one kind is the shit that's going to go up no matter what. The shit that next year is going to cost more than this year. Postage stamp. Let's start with that, right? He says the problem with that inflation, that sticky inflation, is that it has no economic content in it. He said what economists like are inflation numbers, pricing numbers that tell you what the economy is doing. And so that's why they exclude shit. It's not that it's not ripping your ass off. It's that it has no value to them. And so they'll say, well, exclude this and this and this, because if, for example, the price of food were to literally go up and down with the economy, you'd be watching the price of food. Whereas if your taxes are never going to go down again, there's no content. Now, what the economists should do is explain themselves better. Because the average person listens to them and they're saying, well, there's 3.5% inflation. They're describing an inflation in which the prices of the things that are tied tightly to the economy are going up 3.5%. Those same things might go down 3.5% in a recession. We consider those numbers stupid because we know that the price of things have gone up at least 10%. And since 2022, ask Jimmy Iorio how much his restaurant inputs cost. He has a good beat on it. Guys who run restaurants, convenience stores, they know what their inputs are. He says 40%. But that some of those inflations economists, they're not tied to the economy, so the economists don't care. And what they should do is tell us that, rather than just pretend like there's 3.5% inflation. Now, I think the Feds say there's 3.5% inflation because A, they want to leave open the door to cut. I don't think Powell wants to cut yet. So I don't think he wants inflation to go down yet. I don't think he wants the job. I don't think he wants the houses to drop. I don't think he wants the market. I think he wants to be able to keep the thing elevated so he can keep the interest rates elevated to get some of the cheap ass debt rolled over into the more expensive debt without the system blowing the fuck up somehow. So I think he's trying to get things back into whack without an explosion. On the other hand, I think he must want to wring Biden's neck for sending $200 billion to Ukraine and all this money to illegal immigrants and shit. We talked about putting them in hotels and shit in New York City. That may be a commercial real estate bailout, right? They're saying, holy fuck, these buildings are empty. That the problem is not these people need places to stay. These buildings are fucking empty. Then one day, Kunstler, do you believe that commercial real estate could be in a secular, not coming back decline, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Right. So that is the CRE problem. But Kunstler asked, well, what do you do with the buildings? I'd never really gotten to the end of that thought process. And he says, do you disassemble them? What do you do with a 57-story office tower in Manhattan?
Right.
That's empty. And I don't have a good answer to that, but it looks, if I were to, here's a thought. If I wanted to help Detroit or St. Louis, one of these places that have these horrible sort of formerly middle class neighborhoods are all burnt out and shit. If I were the federal government, I wanted to help, I would spend some federal money and bulldoze all the burnt out buildings. I would just take them, raise them. I don't know why the word raise sounds so familiar as in lifting as opposed to knocking down, but I would destroy them all and leave open space. I don't know who owns the land, presumably the city, and just say, okay, all the detritus is gone. It's up to the free market to figure out what to do with this. Because it's all those burnt buildings in the neighborhood that keep the neighborhood from gentrifying. Keep it from becoming something better.
Right.
And so I would treat it like a Superfund site. And it's government money, but on the other hand, you go, we just gave $200 billion to Ukraine.
What's the difference?
Take that money back. By the way, that's Kennedy's argument. Stop bombing the shit out of people and start paying for shit that we want at least. So that's why I'm kind of a Kennedy fan, even though he's gone pretty left wing again.
Would have been interesting if Trump took him on the ticket.
Who would you have liked to have seen? Who was your first choice?
I don't know. I didn't have a first choice.
How about Vance? Do you think are you not happy with Vance?
I'm ambivalent. I don't know much about him. It seems like a good. I don't know, say good choice. He's young.
I suspect he's the deep state's choice.
It seems like it. He's Thiel's choice. He's Thiel's guy. I'm not a big Thiel fan.
Well, when you kept seeing those lists of Trump ticket possibilities, I kept drawing this conclusion that they were explicitly handing us the 5 they wanted. They said, here's the five people that Trump's considering. And by the time Trump's done, he doesn't even know. Some guy said, here, Don, take a card, any card. Oh, you just got the ace of spades. So I was pretty sure Ramaswamy had no chance. I would love to have seen Kennedy in there. That would have been fun. I would have liked to have seen Gabbard in there, despite your scary story about her being a psyoper. Vance, for one thing, I read Hillbilly Elegy. I'm not convinced he's a hillbilly. his grandmother was a hillbilly. He grew up in Ohio.
He went to Yale.
He went to Yale. So he is a success story.
I heard potentially Skull and Bones. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. That would turn me off because I'm convinced those guys are bad.
I heard the allegation. I'm not going to say whether it's true or false.
Yeah. There's nothing we'll ever be able to say again that's true or false.
He's close with Vivek. I think they either grew up together or I think he named his kid Vivek after him.
Well, the scary connectivities are a little bizarre.
Beyond,
when you see a picture of a prep school with John Kerry and Bob Mueller sitting next to each other in the prep school, and you go, this is getting a little inbred here to me. The fact that the presidents come from 3 universities,
right?
And there really are smart guys all over the place. They don't have to come from 3 universities, but they now seem to be coming from 3. I hope we're wrong about the doom story. I've been trying to be more upbeat. If Trump had been killed, I'm wondering what that would have done to me. I wonder what that would have been done to me. The fact that he didn't get shot and his ear got pinged, and the whole thing seems absurd, is kind of keeping it in the fantasy category, right? If he had gotten it right in the forehead, it would have been a much more amazing reality. And if they do it again and they get him, that'll be an unbelievable reality. Right?
Seems like it's coming. We'll see.
I don't know. Maybe they said, okay. I thought they were gearing up to accept him and cut deals with him and say, here's the deal. We're not going to cap you, but you can't do A, B, C, and D. And if I were Trump, I'd say, okay, whatever. You got to give me the wall. Right?
What if they cap Biden from here on out? I mean, it can get absurd.
I think they can get Biden out of there. There's too many ways to get him out. You walk in his office and say, look, we're gonna send your son to prison. We're gonna out you on all your Chinese and Burisma deals and shit like that. We're gonna throw it all on the table. It's time to go.
We'll see.
They can get very ugly. I think Biden has so many skeletons in the closet.
Yeah.
And the only thing that would keep them safe is that he's probably got his share that he could rat them out, but I'm not sure. I think they can just destroy the guy. So I'm a little surprised that they were pushed back. But I think they're saying, okay, you want to play tough. That's like Putin getting pushed back in Ukraine. He said, okay, if you want a real war, I will bring it.
Right.
It wasn't a real war at the start. So, wow, could it be any weirder?
No, I don't think it can be. I hope we can reconnect in a few months because I think it will get weirder in ways we can't imagine. I can't see it not ramping up from here just as the money deteriorates. And
right.
I think that's where it's going, but we'll see. I really hope I'm wrong. I hope we're being doomers. I'd love for it to just be fine.
By the way, how'd you like chaos back there?
I haven't gotten to it yet. I haven't gotten to it yet.
That's pretty good, actually.
I pulled it out specifically to remind myself to read it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. One time I did a podcast with what's his face? God, I'm really losing my marbles. Very prominent Hedgeye guy. Hedgeye. Who runs Hedgeye? Keith,
yeah.
Everyone stages their background. My background looks like some city dump. But I hung a sign back there without saying anything. In the very end, I said, I hung a sign behind me, and they zoomed in and says, Fauci sucks.
Good for you.
That's the guy I'd like to see. If you could put a guy in prison, you have a top 5 list on that?
He'd probably
Fauci,
be up there.
He'd be up there. He'd be up there. He'd be up there. I might put Biden up there, but we kind of got to get past this shit.
Yeah, we do. We really do.
So I'm working hard to not get in arguments with my colleagues. I don't think they want to get in arguments with me either, because I'm like the hippie in the '60s, jamming my finger in your chest, saying, "Do you know how many people died in Cambodia from U.S. bombing?" And I'm going, "No, I don't. I don't want to hear about it. Get the fuck out of my face." Right? I'm the guy. I come too armed. Pain in the ass, probably. So, but I had a colleague come at me hard saying it's irresponsible for you to say that the election was rigged. I said, but I think it was. He says, you don't have a shred of evidence. I said, I have a ton of evidence. All right. And I finally realized after the argument, I dialed it back. And I tried to use Peter Boghossian's logic of how to deal with an argument like that. And I realized what he was saying is that he doesn't have a shred of evidence. Right. And then I didn't mention to him, I said, by the way, I had read Molly Hemingway's book, Rigged, which she laid out the whole story. Not that it was rigged, but how prone to rigging it was, all the things that were poised to make it crooked. She actually held back saying it was definitively rigged. She just said, here are all the holes. Here's where there could be bodies buried. And I didn't mention that to him and stuff like that. And I do my homework. Right? Part of it's laying it out on Twitter and watching the people come at you. Right? To figure out, to learn something, all you have to do is put something slightly wrong out there on Twitter and then just sit back and start reading.
Right. Learn.
You will be told very quickly how wrong you are.
Well, I don't think you're wrong, Dave. I think you're onto something, but
we don't
I
have
don't think
many
you're
points
right.
of disagreement.
I think that we'll never know, but we're trying to understand and interpret what we see.
Well, we're not even going to know what's true when it's over. That's
Right.
the problem.
We're not.
Like World War I. Ben Steele suggested if I want to learn about World War I that I should read Europe's Last Summer. And one of the things you pick up right away is that shooting the Archduke had nothing to do with starting World War I, right? And that's what we're all told.
Right.
We're told Victor Davis Hanson's book. We're told that the conquistadors beat the Aztecs because they thought they were gods. And he says the evidence says they thought they were gods for about 2 days. And the rest of it was that the way the two different groups fought, the Aztecs just fucked it up. Completely fucked it up. He said they had this societal-based idea of capturing. Said, you got some Spanish conquistador in armor with a sword. You're just going to get killed trying to capture that guy. He said the conquistadors just kept outsmarting them. And Cortez was not a warrior. He was an administrator. The other thing that's scary about Victor Davis Hanson's book, maybe that's put me in the doom loop. He talks about 4 collapsed empires. And the 2 things that I took home from one is it happens very quickly, stunningly quickly. In some cases, one day. And they thought they were invincible, and all of a sudden, boom, they got vinced. The second thing is that the attackers start out thinking they have to win. And then they realize that if they win, there's still going to be a risk because these bastards are coming back. And so they change their plans in mid-fight to, we have to exterminate them. They don't set out to exterminate them, but deductive reasoning gets to the point, says, look, if we leave no Thebians left, they cannot come back at us. We leave no Carthaginians left, they cannot come back at us. And so, and I don't want to be on the receiving end. In fact, that's reminded me of a guy who was standing up in Congress. They were trying to pass the Patriot Act or something. But it was after one of our wars, and he stood up in defense of supporting the military. And he said, we watched that bombing. He says, I never want to be on the receiving end of one of those. And I go, holy shit, he's right. But I do worry we could find ourselves on the receiving end.
Right.
But it might not be a bomber, might be a hack. You hack our grid,
Yeah.
we're down within a week or two. Civilization will unravel. As soon as people think they're going to starve, they will become marauders very quickly. So my wife wants me to buy more guns. She's a liberal. And she's now saying, why are you delaying on buying more guns? I said, a little voice in my head that says I don't want to go there. I own a couple guns, but they suck. And when I got canceled in 2020, I slept with them loaded. I was ready to blow someone's head off. Frontier justice. They enter my house.
Yeah.
They are going to be on the receiving end of what was called a wireless hole punch.
Oh man.
So,
Dave, this has been, I didn't want to cut you off.
no, you have to. It'll be Wednesday.
It's been so dope. I love catching up with you.
Yeah.
We'll have to do it again
We
soon.
should record the next one.
Right.
What's that thing that blinks behind you?
That's my Bitcoin clock. That's the block clock.
Is that a Bitcoin being every time a Bitcoin?
Every time the block is recorded, it gives me a new stat. So I get the price or sats per dollar or block height. It's a
When
good
did
way
you
to
start
think.
buying Bitcoin again? When did you start?
Late 2017.
Okay. Max Kaiser had at least 10,000 Bitcoins back in like 2010.
So he says.
Well, he said it in 2010, though.
Sure. And then so he says he's kept it.
Well, it'd be stupid to hang on to all of it. You really ought to be saying, okay, let's pay off our mortgage. Let's see, right? This. But I did a podcast with him one day and I said, I imagine you guys are not having trouble paying your bills now.
I would imagine no. I have no idea though. I really don't like when people talk about
That's Max. That's Max.
That's a lot of people in Bitcoin or anything who say they bought XYZ at XY price in.
Well, I walked from it at $10 a coin. I was first presented with the idea and I said, it's not for me. $10 a coin. I also sat down with a grad student. He wanted to buy it at $50 a coin. And I said, the very fact that you want to buy it is a red flag, right? He's probably wants to kill me now.
It's a hard thing to get your head around. A lot of people don't invest in currencies. You know, just on that level, it's like, why am I buying a medium exchange when we think about currency? And so I think very early on, it was hard to see it as a store of value or something that would appreciate.
Well, part of my problem is I'm also a Luddite.
But you're not.
No, but I am though.
I hate it.
I hate it when my computer all of a sudden there's a compatibility problem. It drives me nuts.
I'm sure, but you understand it. You know, you might not be able to work it, but
I hate it though. But I detest it though.
But
I sit there. I'll be at a website and I'll go, why can't these motherfuckers?
How much of you not wanting to buy Bitcoin is because you knew about it at $10?
Oh, that can be it. That can be a thing.
It's got to be a big thing.
It is hard to jump back on a moving train. There's no question. I would have sold it at 50.
Yeah, I mean, that would have made a lot of sense. I mean, you would have 5x.
Right.
That's a lot of money in fiat land.
Right.
But it's a lot of money when you don't realize you're on the beginning of a...
where would I be psychologically if I had bought it at 10 and sold it at 50?
Maybe slightly worse off than you are now.
That's right. Well, I also bought gold at $270 an ounce, silver at $385.
People can bounce back.
$385. Right. So I have my wins that are adequate. So I sold shares of a stock that I got through a merger that's now up 100-fold. But I don't I don't care, because when I sold it, the reason I sold it is because I had no idea why I was hanging on to it. I didn't know that company.
See, I see Bitcoin as a one-way trade. I don't have to know business risk. I don't have to know fashion risk. I don't have to know
I get that.
location risk. I don't have to have holding risk. I don't have maintenance risk, repairs, depreciation, any of those things.
Right.
But I think it takes a certain amount of effort to get there. I wasn't there right away.
Yeah,
But,
and when when I read, Lynn Alden made an interesting argument that I thought was constructive. The guys who say Bitcoin is energy, and I go, that sounds hokey to me. I'll get off that in a second, but that always sound hokey. And they talk about using cheap energy. I go, but it still uses energy. You're just talking about how to optimize it. But Alden makes a different case. Alden makes the case that if you're trying to, for example, put in an energy supply and you're trying to get it off the ground, I'll say you build a solar farm out in the middle of Timbuktu. The hodler showing up and paying you for that energy, which is maybe stranded, allows that energy source to get off the ground. As it evolves, then I'll say, okay, now, so if you were up fracking and somehow there was a burn off, the Bitcoin consumers of energy consume shitty energy that allows people who need to sell shitty energy to be viable. And so that's a good argument to me. That's a real constructive argument. It's not an argument for buying Bitcoin. It's an argument for why Bitcoin is more than just a currency. I thought that was one of the more interesting arguments she made.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's way more than
how do you ignore Lynn Alden, right? I mean, if there's a person who's smart, it would have to be her.
Yeah.
Who's the sharpest hodler out there? This is a dangerous question for you. First, apologize to all your friends you didn't mention.
I believe in myself, Dave. I'm the sharpest out there, but there are people that get it. Lynn Alden, Lawrence Lepard. I think you get it.
Larry spent 2 hours with me at lunch, banging away on my forehead. I have had some of the best hodlers on the planet working me over hard.
I think you get it. I think you're a Bitcoiner. I don't think it's about. I think it's about you don't think Bitcoin is Bitcoin. I think you get Bitcoin. I just don't think believe that Bitcoin is Bitcoin yet. And I think you're looking for more proof. But you get Bitcoin. You get hard money. You understand.
I understand all that.
You understand all of it.
And I had a guy who wanted to try to sell me on Bitcoin, and I said, "Look, I don't need to burn 2 hours of you trying to Bitcoin pitch me yet again." I said, I am now on my own to find when is the right time, if ever. And I don't need to understand the blockchain even.
No,
I don't need to understand the blockchain.
I think you get it. I think that you're waiting to see. I think you're playing defense. People want me to try to convince you to get Bitcoin. I don't want to try to convince you to get Bitcoin because I want to learn from you about other things.
Well, I'm a better devil's advocator than most.
Yeah.
It doesn't do any good to have some guy say, "Oh, it's just bullshit," right? That doesn't do any good.
I think at some point you'll jump in when the needle moves hard enough on you and your own personal holdings, and the battle's been won. And you'll do
that's what I'm watching for. I'm hoping to recognize the battle's been won.
Right. So I don't think there's
after a big battle where Bitcoin will look bruised.
Yeah.
Right.
It might even get knocked out a few times before
for the battle to be won, there has to be a battle.
Yeah.
And so I'm not waiting for a dip. People think what price I'm not
No, you're not waiting for a dip. You're waiting for victory.
I'm waiting for the battle.
Yeah. And decisiveness. I get it. And I think you have the bullets to hold on. Right.
Once I make a decision, I make one-way decisions.
Right, but you could lose a few ducats and make the decision later and move on. So I think it's a wait and see approach. And I don't think it's a conceptual thing. I think it's literally like we're playing a simulation and like, okay, this team's gonna beat that team. And you're like, I don't care about the simulation. I want to see the fight.
People
It's
ask me
when fight
why.
night comes and I see them win, I'll then jump on.
People ask me why I vaccinated. I wouldn't have, but I would have lost my job.
Right.
And they say, yeah, but you could lose. And I said, here's the problem. I did the risk reward analysis. I waited and watched, and people were dying and we weren't hearing about it. So there was that. But one of the things that I would have had trouble with is if I quit my job and, 4 years later, I'm saying, I'd like to buy my son the violin, but we can't.
Right.
And meanwhile, this vaccine, which I opposed, saved the world. And so I finally said, look, I don't think the reward's there, but I don't think the risk is huge. And the risk is not huge on the vaccine. I mean, there are people who are dying and it looks awful. But the vast majority of people are surviving. Now, we could die. I mean, we could have all clipped. Did you get vaccinated? I don't remember. The vaccinators could have clipped 10 years off their lives. That's a lot. But I just said, okay. Part of it was also quit fighting every fight. Take one for the team here. And so I decided to do it. And every decision I ever make that's big, and by the way, I wouldn't buy 1% Bitcoin. That's like buying a $10,000 life insurance policy. It makes no sense to me. If I'm going to go Bitcoin, I'm going to go in enough where it matters. I'll average in maybe. Because if you jump all in, getting knocked all out is real easy. But I put every big decision through a filter that says if it goes terribly wrong, will I forgive myself?
Right.
And I have no major regrets in my life that I can remember where I somehow blew that test.
That's the big one.
That's the big one. If I can look back and say, look, it didn't work. Like I went off to grad school in organic chemistry with a degree in genetics intending to go to med school. I said, but if it doesn't work, this is what I'll do. So Ph.D. Right. But I sent it through that filter. So what's the downside? And does it seem reasonable based on what you know? And it was. So everyone should use that filter, in my opinion. If it goes very badly, will you forgive yourself?
Yep.
It's like getting married, right? It's having kids. You say, yes, I will forgive myself if I marry the wrong person. Because right now it looks like the right person. And if you go broke, your wife might be second guessing, but. Are you now full-time Bitcoin podcaster?
No, I still got
You're
the
a
corporate
code?
accounting consulting job.
Okay.
Still hacking away all day. Yeah.
Okay. See that? Sometimes you burn the ships in the harbor, and sometimes you say, no, we might need those ships. So.
Yeah.
Need.
What was I gonna say on that? I mean, I got young kids.
I know.
You
can't be doing Hail Marys with young kids.
And the economics right now, just with where projections, trying to figure out where things are gonna go.
So let's say we have a big move. 6 months, year, 2 years, 5 years. What's the 50% probability cutoff for that?
In terms of what? 50%
economically, macroeconomics, which
we have
will
a big move
drag
in
markets
Bitcoin?
down. No, big move in the world markets. We're going to have another big move in the world markets. There's no doubt. I mean, there always will be.
I think we're going to melt up
before we melt down.
I don't know if we will melt. Well,
you got the only way you're going to melt up from here
is
through an inflation that's
yeah. I think we're going to see a very
complete
high
artificial melt up.
Yeah, I think there'll be an artificial melt up.
I don't even like the term melt up by that model. Melt up to me implies you're actually getting gains.
No gains, but maybe in terms of maybe hard money. But I think most assets will melt up. No gains.
So you don't think we'll ever go through a nominal decline?
I think at the end of that, we'll go through a nominal decline. I don't think we've gone through the melt up yet.
It's conceivable and I've said this a few times, that they always end up in the nominal decline at the end. that you go through the melt up, but you always end up in a deflationary situation.
I don't know. I think that's probably a few years away, but maybe we're in it. Maybe
Well,
maybe
the
we're at
presidential
beginning of it.
cycle says, next 2
Right.
years.
Yeah,
No
don't
president,
know.
even Trump, doesn't want to have the meltdown
That's what I'm saying.
years 3 and 4.
No one wants it.
That my biggest gripe about Trump is actually his efforts to pump the markets when he was
Yes.
president. That was my biggest gripe of Trump. Always trying to push the Fed into lowering rates to get the markets juiced. And I'm going, no, Don.
He was the first one to be overtly political about the Fed.
Oh, no. Johnson was terrible. LBJ was terrible. LBJ is rumored to have grabbed the Federal Reserve chair by the lapels and jammed him up the wall.
I don't blame him. I mean, like his job depended on it in a way. I
You
don't remember the circumstances.
You kind of got to
like,
blame him. That doesn't fall into my frontier justice category. That's sociopathic. LBJ was said, according to an expert on narcissism, worse than Trump. I read a book on narcissism to understand Trump. It turns out
I wonder where
it wasn't the right
Nixon
book.
was on that.
Nixon, you've heard Carlson's theory. Nixon was
Most
offed
popular
by the CIA.
Yeah, I heard Carlson's theory is very
Makes a lot of
interesting.
sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
I made reference to Woodward being in the CIA, and the DOD guy said actually it was naval intelligence. So Woodward came out of nowhere,
right,
to hammer Nixon. Deep Throat was CIA. The break-in crowd was CIA.
Yes, right. And Ford was on top of the Warren Commission and an unelected VP. It's crazy. And they and from birth, I was told Nixon was a horrible person and the worst president ever. And I didn't realize.
So I'm reading a book right now by a woman named Diana West, who talks about the infiltration of the post-war government with the commies. And she's basically telling the story that McCarthy tried to tell. And it's very well referenced. And it's supposedly FDR's right-hand man, the guy who sat next to FDR late into the night, chatting about what to do tomorrow, that sort of thing, was a total commie, shoving shit at the Soviets nonstop. And I asked an intelligence guy if she was credible, and he said, well, I haven't read her book, but I think she's supposed to be pretty good. And so we don't actually know what happened in history, let alone the present. And the future, it's off the table.
Right.
And even when it comes, we won't know what came.
Yeah, they've completely obscured history. I mean, we're not getting the real story.
And the internet's made it worse. Before they used to hide shit. Now they gaslight the fuck out of us. They gaslight the fuck out of us.
Right.
Right. When they tell us Iranians went after Trump, holy moly. How can you say that shit? That's why I don't understand the climate changers and stuff. I go, you haven't noticed that everything they say is a lie? Every last thing they say is a lie. But somehow climate change is real. You really buy that story? So anyway, I'll let you go.
I really
your wife's
hope
gonna dump you.
Maybe this past weekend was a demarcation line in terms of the way
There's
people
no
interpret
evidence.
stuff. So
There's no evidence. I don't know.
maybe not.
This reminds me of the Epstein suicide.
Yeah.
We know there's a lot of bullshit, but we don't have exactly great clarity. I'm not.
No, but
convinced
hopefully
he's dead.
the people refuse to take the story as they're being fed. Dave, this has been incredibly dope. I'm gonna have to set something up for the fall, either before or after the election.
Anytime. No warning needed.
Let people know where they can find you and your work before we roll out.
David B. Collum, Twitter.
All right, man. Thank you so much, Dave. This has been dope.
It was fun.
Today's episode with David Collum is brought to you by River, the preferred choice for buying this Bitcoin dip. Get up to $100 in Bitcoin when you sign up and buy Bitcoin at river.com/matrix. Have you secured your ticket to Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville yet? Don't miss out on this historic event of epic proportions. Use the code MATRIX at checkout to enjoy a 10% discount on your order. Hurry, visit b.tc/conference now to secure your spot and join us this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in Nashville. Don't wait any longer. Get your ticket now and be part of this momentous occasion. Remember to use the code MATRIX for 10% off your tickets at b.tc/conference. I can't wait to see you there. Keep building, keep stacking, and always be laser focused. This is Cedric. Peace.